All right, we'd like to welcome everyone to the Ojai Unified School District Board meeting. It's wonderful to have you here. If you could join me and stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Well, we're going through the first few items. If anyone would like to speak during public comments, please fill out a speaker form and give that to Kathy, and we'll get you scheduled in here. First up is the approval of the agenda. I don't believe there are any changes.
There is none.
So can we have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
All in favor? Aye. Great. And then minutes from our previous meeting of September 15th. Are there any comments? Great. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And then our student representative report. Megan, welcome and happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I don't think you want me to sing happy birthday. But yeah, we'd love to hear your report.
Alright. Well, we reached out to all the schools this time and we got news from everyone. And first off is Nordoff, and our homecoming planning is in full swing. Homecoming will take place on October 19th through the 24th. Our theme this year is Greece, which I'm very excited about. Students will participate in dress-up days throughout the week, enjoy a rally on Friday hosted by Danny and Sandy, which we are thinking about using the Hoys as Danny and Sandy. Head to a drive-in movie at halftime of the football game and kick up our heels at a sock hop in the gym. Nordoff teachers are using Parent Edge now. Teachers send a text message of all students' homework and it pops up on the parent's phone in hopes that parents will feel more connected to Nordoff and be able to talk to their children more about school and everything. Nordoff freshmen are taking this new course called College and Career Foundations for their first semester. Students are learning about the possibilities for their future, creating a 10-year plan that all teachers will eventually be able to see and discuss with their students, which I think is really nice. Matilaha News is their athletic director, Andrea Vasquez, reports that cross-country, wrestling, and girls volleyball are in full swing. All teams are practicing and have participated in their first games. Leadership is hosting their first dance November 6th, and it will be an Aloha dance. They are also sponsoring a breast cancer awareness week the first week of October, a box tops education drive at the end of October, a red ribbon week in October, and a bully-free Matilaha week in November.
I didn't hear the comments, so I heard cross-country wrestling, and I thought, what an interesting sport. Sorry.
It takes a lot of time.
Miramonte's news is on October 21st, the school will be observing National Unity Day. They are asking that all students, staff, and parents wear orange to help send the message that everyone is linked together. Miramonte cares about people who are being bullied and wants bullying to end. The week of October 26th through the 30th is Red Ribbon Week. All students and staff and parents are asked to wear red on Wednesday of that week to send the message that they support a drug-free life. On that Friday, October 30th, Miramonte is having Crazy Hair Day. Leadership will have a contest with prizes for the following category: tallest, most colorful, craziest style, and best single color. And Chaparral's news is that they have new classes to offer to students this year, including graphic design / product printing, as well as basketball skills taught by Mr. Paddock. Topa's news is October 7th is the school jogathon. All proceeds go directly to the classrooms for the teachers to purchase extras for the class. Last year, many teachers used the money to buy Chromebooks, art supplies, reading materials, and more. On Friday, October 16th, Topa Topa will be participating in Great California Shakeout. Topa will be practicing earthquake drills as well as fire drills. On October 23rd, from 4 to 7 in the evening, Topa's annual fall festival is Topa's annual fall festival. Their PTA does a great job on this event, and it is always a family favorite. And lastly, Miners Oaks news is they held an annual jog-a-thon on Friday, October 7th. The kids did amazing. They have until Friday, October 9th to turn in any money they raised. Every 6th grader that participated will receive 100% of what they raised to their Catalina trip. The Fall Festival will happen on Friday, October 23rd, and on Thursday, October 15th from 4 to 8 p.m. at Don Lalo's in Miners Oaks. You can enjoy some great food with your friends and help raise money for Miners Oaks School. Don Lalo is once again giving back 20% of all orders, takeout, or dine-in to the school.
Great. Great review of everything going on. Thanks a lot.
Actually, I'd like to add that Jim and Rob's is doing a fundraiser tonight for the Nordoff water polo team. And they're giving, I think, 10% or something.
Oh, terrific.
If you're hungry after you leave
It's a good
school.
reason for a short meeting. Good. All right, and were there officer elections, or are those coming up?
They're going to be, for Nordoff, they're after homecoming, because we're really busy with planning everything. So,
Okay, good. Fantastic.
You should go after a couple of minutes? Just a couple of minutes?
yeah,
Okay.
I just have a birthday dinner to
Couple
get
minutes.
to. Yeah,
Couple of minutes.
okay.
All right.
How not subtle was that?
No, you
Okay, terrific. Great, then let's move on. What I want to do is, I think there are some comments on the Stand Strong Ojai event, but first we'd like to do the other comments. And why don't we start with Angie? Choose one. There you are.
There we go. Hey,
Oh, okay. You mean we can do something before you speak? That's okay. Bill, Bill, why don't you come on up?
stay here?
Yeah, can you, or
Yeah, you
you can have a seat, but just,
Oh, you want me
yeah,
to
just wait a minute.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, dear Megan. Happy birthday to you. Yay.
Is that a trio?
All right.
There you go.
Thank you for going to Suzanne so quickly.
Don't take all this with me.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, thanks.
Megan,
Not getting a spoon.
before you leave, I just want to say, I've never seen a student rep or student person, student rep?
Yeah.
I've never seen somebody talk about the elementary schools.
There you go.
And I love that you did that. Thank you. It's really nice that you included us in your report. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now you can go.
And you're on.
Yeah,
Welcome.
always the teacher, always bossing people around, right? Well, I'm here, actually up here for two different things. I've been meaning to come up and talk to the board for a couple of years, but it's nerve-wracking talking to you guys, so I haven't done it. But I wanted to talk just for a moment about transitional kindergarten. I've been teaching transitional kindergarten, and that combination for many years. And when I took it over, I took the role seriously of wanting to meet the needs of those transitional kindergarten kids and their developmental needs. And it's a challenge when you have the 4-year-olds and you have 10 or 12 4-year-olds or 13 at different times, and then the rest of the class, which at times has gone up to 33. 5-year-olds. It's a challenge to meet their needs. And so I know that our district is about to have a conversation on October 21st about transitional kindergarten and what we want to do with that program. Having spent last year a brief moment in time of just having kindergarten and not having a combination class, I would like to put it out there that I think that that's what we should do. We should really have a transitional kindergarten class to meet the needs of those kindergarten, or those children, and a kindergarten class to meet the needs of those children. And part of the reason why is that you can never tell a 4-year-old or a group of 4-year-olds, just go do this on your own right now, and I'll do this over here with 5-year-olds. You can never do that. And if you have 10 to 12 of them, you're just asking for like chaos. And I'm actually pretty good at managing those, I have to say. I'm pretty good at it. But it does not meet the needs, whether I'm good at it or not, it doesn't meet the needs of those children. And I think that's what the law intended, was that we meet the needs of those kids and we give them an opportunity to have 2 years, and one of those years should be different than the other. So I just wanted to put that out there and just say that's my hope. Okay? And I still have time, but that's what I needed to say.
So you can start fresh.
Okay, so I'll start fresh. Now I am the OFT
Angie
president.
Janassi, welcome.
Thank you. Now I'm not a kindergarten teacher, I'm the OFT president. And when I came up and spoke to you last year, at the end of the year, I talked about coming up and talking about teachers being a priority. And to be honest, I knew I wanted us to be a priority, but I wasn't clear exactly what that meant for me, and I think what it meant for the members of the Ojai Federation. Now I'm getting clearer, and I thought I'd let you in on what has come to mind. When we were negotiating that last year, Hank and I and all of us, we talked about putting us down as a 1% each year, putting 1% raise each year. But then as we looked at the out years, when it didn't work in the budget, those 1% were taken away. And for us, as certificated teachers, it was like that 1% went, boom, it's gone, and because it just doesn't work in the budget. And what it finally occurred to me is, if we are truly a priority, the certificated staff is truly a priority, and actually any of the staff, if we're truly a priority, then you never take away that 1% or the 2% or whatever you've put down in your budget. You keep that there. And then what you do is figure out in the rest of the budget how to make it fit so that you honor the people that are working with the children. So that's what I mean by priority. I think that's fine. I finally honed in on it. And I'm speaking for the OFT, but I feel the same way for classified and for everyone who works with the kids directly. I feel like what we need to do is say, this is important. Those people are important. We're going to honor them and acknowledge them by keeping that percentage in the budget, and then we're going to work around it. Because that's what we do. You know, our mortgage is important. You don't pop that off and say, no, I really want to go out for entertainment, or I want new clothes, right? So that's it. That's my latest statement. Figured it out.
Well, thanks for your comments. Great. Steve, welcome.
Boy, let's see if I can do this in a New York minute here. First of all, I want to say congratulations to the board. I've seen some good things happening. In particular, I walked into second grade room today to donate some books, and they're using their Chromebooks. Just like cool. And they were whizzing right through it. And I know that wasn't always possible, so appreciate that. But more importantly, I know in the last couple of meetings that this board's had some difficult issues to address, and they've actually been part of the board meeting to talking about the investment issue and talking about the issue with the Stand Strong Ojai. And I think that's so important to address those in the issues. Not that you would do anything different if you didn't address those in a public issue, but it's about the appearance of doing the right thing. And I think appearances are just really, really important. This school district, and I think everyone who doesn't have a kid in the school districts loves the schools. We've been here 5 years now, going on our 5th year, and I can only think of one experience that my kids have had, 2 of my kids have had that has, been anything less than substandard. We moved from the district to get away from those schools. They didn't have good teachers, they didn't have good administration. So personally, I can say that I'm very glad to be in the Ojai school districts. And, one of the things that the board's actually looking at in conjunction with the committee is, gosh, what should happen if our enrollments continue to decline? And I would agree with the position of the board in that most of the time it's not because our schools are bad. We stack up pretty well. But there are other factors that influence people's decision to stay in Ojai. And 2 months ago, I started a project called the Ojai Vision Project. And that project was basically in a very non-threatening way to get everybody's opinion out there about what's important. I start out with a question that says, what's Ojai known for? What do you like about Ojai? And what are the challenges for the next 10 years? And I tried to include most of you in emails about that. Did anybody not? Did I miss anybody totally with that? And this is a question, it's not a hypothetical. Yes? Okay, good. So you know what's been done so far. And I don't want to come up here and say you have to contribute $5,000 because that's not really what's needed. What's needed is publicity to increase the number of people that attend these events. What's the benefit for you? Well, quite honestly, I know we have board meetings, we have site council meetings, we try and gather information for people about our schools, and that's good. But as I mentioned, there are other things that are concerning other people and that affects their decision whether they actually stay in the district. And this is a rather painless way to get that information. And so what I would simply ask is that you consider allowing me to put a flyer for the next meeting out with the packets that go home in the schools. I know that we do that for other events that are considered worthwhile for our student population. So I'd ask you to consider that. I know it's not on your agenda tonight, but if you would, put that in whatever pot you use to come up with the next agenda, then that would be good. And, part of my reason for reaching out to you is that I didn't want you to think that this was smoke and mirrors. And so I invited all of you to attend the meeting. And fortunately, Mr. Shanahan was able to attend. So I know I'm out of time, but Mike, if you'd like to say your experience in that, not one way or another, but just, was it helpful to you? And I know I blindsided you. I don't like to do that, but my kid had an appointment at Ventura at 4, so.
Is he allowed to?
If you would like to,
Well,
and again, no
it's not
pressure.
on the agenda, but anyone can say whatever they want to say.
Well, I found it interesting. I thought everybody participated in good faith. There were some very interesting commonalities that came out of the conversation. I think it's a good exercise. It helps people decide what they value in the city. So I think conversation is always good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Praise you. We want to move on to the next agenda item, but I want to make sure there are any public comments that are not about Stand Strong Ojai. Okay, great. Then let's introduce this new section. We're fortunate to have Janine Murphy here, who has quite a lot of insight. And Hank, you want to?
Well, I'd just like to start out very briefly by saying that the response to the combination of the 3 events, the 3 sessions within the broad event, Thursday morning at Rotella, and Bill Rosen is here. He is so interested at some point in speaking about that. Obviously had a lot to do with that as the principal. And Greg Bayless similarly at Nordhoff for Friday morning, and then of course the Saturday evening event. It was a three-session event, but only 2 of the 3 were directly involved with the school district. I'm sure everybody knows that by now. The Saturday night event, while hosted at the Ojai Community Stadium through the process that we use to make our facilities available, was clearly initiated by a group not related to the school district, and I'm sure in some form that will come up later in the next however many minutes we spend on this agenda item. But what I wanted to do tonight, at least at the front end, was to introduce Janine Murphy. I've spoken about her often at this table. She knows how I feel about her. She knows how strongly I personally feel about the work that she leads in what I'm just going to generally call our anti-bullying program, which is now in its 3rd year. It's been one of the most successful programs, certainly student services programs, with which I've ever been involved. And I think it speaks clearly to the priority that we place not on just student safety. That's sort of an umbrella statement. It isn't just safety. It's having students know that they have advocates at all levels of the school district, and people who care about them when they sometimes don't care enough about themselves. And leading all of that is Janine, who is a certified mental health clinician, among other things. She has all kinds of certifications. But I can tell you, for me, she has been my go-to person when I am faced with some of the most severe challenges that students bring to the table, whether it's a principal's desk or a parent's conversation. And, I have reasonably good instincts, but I do not have the kind of trainings that she has. So we just talk, and she helps guide me a lot of times to take what I think might be a helpful administrative position. Almost tonight, it's 5 to 6. She's here to speak specifically about her impressions of the 2 sessions on Thursday and Friday morning. What she saw, she was there for both sessions. What she experienced as a mom, having both a 6th grader in the math program, and Matilahan, a 7th grader there. What she experienced through conversations with high school students, and her overall impressions of how this set of sessions, this event, fit into our anti-bullying initiative now in its 3rd year. So, Janine, if you share your thoughts, I know we'll get us off to the right start.
Okay, can I just stand here? Is that
Where you want. There's no microphone.
that's okay. I think I can talk loud enough. So, for me, I think when I'm speaking about bullying prevention, the best way to be able to speak about that is what the students are saying. And so I feel like the impact that Nick's presentation had is best described by what the students shared with me. So that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. And there was 2 main themes that came out of that. The first was that the impact that their words have, both positive and negative, on someone else is really important. And even though they get that message, I'm sure, at home, even though we give that message to them at school, hearing that from Nick was important. And it was important enough that they shared that information with me when I asked them what the impact was for them. And then secondly, the impact for them regarding the bully prevention was just about hope, that everybody has their own challenges, that we all have difficulties that we go through, and that there's hope that it can be overcome. And listening to Nick speak about his own personal experiences helped them in what they shared with me. So those were I think, 2 main themes that I received from the students about that information. So that's what I have to say about Nick.
Right, thank you. Linda, Jordan, why don't we have you come up first? While you're coming up, just as a little bit more background, we usually don't have a session like this where we talk about an event that already happened. But we received over 100 emails, letters, calls about the event. And it just seemed like it wasn't the right thing to do to not talk about it. So we'll start with you,
Hi,
Linda.
good evening, everyone. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I just show up because I want to be here all the time and see your smiling faces. I just have to speak from a parent's perspective. I was also at both events. Thank you, Bill Rosen, for inviting parents to attend. I was at the Matilaha as well as the Nordhoff event. And my oldest son, Zoe's older brother, I'm sorry, I wasn't planning on speaking, was suicidal because he was bullied in high school. That's why we're here. We left when I found out all that was happening, and he told me after the fact, after he graduated and he was better again, but he was bullied. And there was nothing like this. There was no programs, no anti-bullying campaigns. There was supposed to be, I know it's like a federal initiative, but there really wasn't anything pragmatic that the kids could look at and speak to and learn about. And, there's many reasons why I love this school district, but the biggest reason is because you all are so creative and courageous in making choices for the kids. And they may not always be the most diplomatic, politically correct choices, but when I was on site, on the schools, both times, I will tell you that Nick stayed within very close boundaries. And I'll tell you something else. My son, who is at Matilaha, came home and talked about it for days and days. And I said, "Are your friends still talking about it, honey?" And he said, "Yeah." Now, my son is now 21 years old. He's great. He's doing good. But I hate to think that because the school district we used to belong to was not courageous, did not make the choices that OUSD makes, that I would be a mom of 2 kids today. So thank you for hearing me speak, and I was duly impressed. Also, I will tell you, I watched the kids, and I even probably wasn't the correct thing to do. I just watched the kids' faces at Nordhoff, and they were engaged and excited, and he made them laugh, and I just felt a difference in the room. And people asked, the questions they asked were just amazing and profound. And his final statement was, "Every life matters." That's basically what he left the kids with. There's nothing that will cause you to be useless. Every life matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dan Nelson.
So thank you for opening this time up for us to talk to you. My name's Dan Nelson. I am a father of 4. My oldest just graduated from college. I have 2 in college right now. The youngest of those 2 that just graduated high school, and then I have 1 that's a freshman in high school. My oldest, who just graduated college, his best friend that he was raised up together in high school here in this community, that they were supposed to graduate together this past spring. His best friend didn't make it. At Christmas time, he committed suicide. If I said his name, many in this room would know his name because he's an Ojai local. This subject matter is real, and it takes bold choices to address it. It's difficult to grow up in this day and this age, and the social pressures and social media has only compounded the complexities. This is tough stuff. And I, for one, would like to just encourage you. I want to say thank you to every single one of you. I read what Mr. Whipple wrote to the paper last week, and I thought it was well worded, and I thought it was well reasoned, and it represented so much grounded thinking. I want to say thank you to our superintendent and to all of you for supporting our principals. Dr. Bayless and Principal Rosen, for what you did in order to make it possible for Nick to speak to our students. Spoke to a lot of parents, spoke to a lot of students, and I know that this truly does make a difference. I know that some have really changed their minds and their attitudes on things, and the way that they're going to treat one another. And it does save lives. And I know in particular, at least some of them, at least one of them, is saying that I've made a different decision concerning this year. For some of us, suicide hits too close to home. And if we could do anything to address it in a very serious way. And something else we've learned is that bullying isn't just limited to our students. If we don't learn anti-bullying or to change our attitudes when we're in school, sometimes it increases and continues even into adulthood. And I think we've even seen some of that in terms of the commentary. And I want to ask you to stand strong, even if you feel like there may be pressures to not do this sort of thing again. I would encourage you. I want to say one more thing. I spoke to a mom this morning, my next door neighbor. She said she couldn't make it to the meeting, but if I had a chance to tell you this. She said when her two daughters are old enough to attend high school, and she knows that she has choices in terms of school, she said that if I could say to Dr. Bayless that if he's still leading that school, that she chooses to send her kids there because she is so confident that there is true leadership at the schools and in this district. I have never felt more proud to stand with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dan, for your comments. Paul Bergman.
Hi, everybody. I want to just say, first of all, I have 4 kids.
Time's up.
They wish they could do this to me in church. They wish they're going to find one of these. Anyways, I love Ojai. I love the schools here are outrageously great. I feel incredibly blessed to be here. Dr. Bayless, Dr. Bangser. I've raised 4 kids here. I have 3 through and 1 still in high school. And I thought, Nick Vujicic coming here was an amazing opportunity for him to speak to the kids. He is bringing a message that needs to be heard about anti-bullying, about suicide. As a special needs kid, and I've worked with special needs individuals my entire life. So that was a really, really, really positive thing. It just crashed at the end. And I had a lot of people contact me who were Christians, non-Christians, social media threads that went 400 deep. Because what happened after that was the problem. Nick is an evangelist. Nick is an ordained minister. Nick has a ministry with a statement of beliefs that they adhere to, very consistent with the churches that were involved, very theologically and fundamentally driven. On the posts of the churches and on Nick's site, it's very clear that outside of the schools, what was happening was a coalition, and I read from his website, of believers from all over Ojai will be hosting, serving at, and funding this evangelical outreach and community service project for Ojai Valley in an effort to bring the message of Jesus to the lost. And that is a theologically driven issue, saving the lost. And that's beautiful. I love it when Mormons come to my door and knock on it. I love it when Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door. And I'm like, that's awesome. I invite them in. I know what they're doing. I have been myself an evangelist for 10 years at a previous ministry. I was a thorn in their side because the ministry was very similar to Nick's. I used my professional platform as a former professional athlete to speak in schools across the country with a very similar message, which was passionate and real, anti-bullying. But that was the bait for me to draw a crowd at the end where I would give what was a real center of our ministry, which was the lost, saving the lost. Now, I don't think like that anymore, but that doesn't matter. I respect those that do. And I don't care if Nick is a Muslim, a Jew, an agnostic, or a Christian. He has, I believe in the free exercise clause. He has a right to share that and be who he is and talk about what his faith even means. I believe in a public school, as long as it's not proselytizing or at the expense of somebody else's faith. And that didn't happen. Dr. Bayless was vigilant, the schools were. What happened is, though, this coalition, where it's very clear the churches had this evangelistic kick to this event, and it was projected that way, and you find it in many of the pictures here. You'll read, even as the stadium was filling, you got most Ojai reigns, where it says, "You are the God who puts chariots on the mountains. Fill the mountains that surround Ojai today with chariots of fire. Let the full weight of heaven surround the valley as stadiums fill. Canopy over the Nordhoff Stadium with your salvation. Draw thousands to come and see the salvation of the Lord." Beautiful. Problem was the advertisement that went out to everybody did not mention a word in his prolific resume that he was an evangelist, that this was a crusade. If you go to Harvest Crusade, with Greg Laurie. You know it's the Harvest, we're harvesting souls crusade. If you go to Billy Graham crusade, you're going to Billy Graham crusade. You don't say, hey, I got this guy, his name is William Graham, international motivational speaker. Come with me. And that's where, if you look at the ad, there is zero mention of that. And that's where a lot of people got upset and burned, including me, because I value everything that Nick did, but I also value trust. And that was a violation of trust for a lot of people. And so far, there's been so much obfuscation about, well, we didn't know, and only we had 2 people in the graphics department, and 500 people involved in this very ornate event, and other people flat out saying, well, it was your responsibility to research it. And that's what angered a lot of people and hurt a lot of people. So all I'm saying is, great event. Nick, come back. Awesome. Come back next year. Speak to the kids again. Have an evangelistic crusade. Bitchin'. Ojai churches. Evangelistic crusade. I think it could have been a win-win if everybody would have just been upfront about the entire event instead of an Amway ambush. Forgive me if you're Amway, but I don't like their tactics either. But anyway, so that's all I got to say.
Thanks for your comments. I don't have any other speaker forms, but if anyone else would like to talk, now's a pretty good time.
Can we get your name first?
Yes, I'm Brandy Wells, Ojai resident. I grew up in the schools here in Ojai, went away, had a family, brought my kids back. I got 3 kids. My husband and I homeschool, so I wasn't really involved in the schools here. And I went to the event, and it was so wonderful to sit in that stadium and view Ojai, the mountains there and everything. And for me, it really brought me back a connection to the high school. I felt like, okay, this is my high school again. Because my kids don't go there. I haven't really been on campus a lot, but I thought it was so wonderful to have so many people in our community who were not associated with the high school come serve the high school, do some cleanup, that kind of thing, and then just being at the event and looking out over the group of people, so many various people from all different walks of life. And at one point when there was the evangelist message, some people left, which was absolutely fine. Some people stayed. But I was so pleased to be a part of something at Nordhoff that didn't necessarily have to do with the high school, because I'm not involved in the high school. So I really appreciate that you kind of opened up that venue and let me be a part of what was going on there. Because it is just such a beautiful, I thought, too bad we don't have more things here. And then I thought, maybe I'll start coming to the football games, because it's just such a beautiful setting. And I just think maybe sometimes it's underutilized. And so to have some event like that fit so many people there, the sound was wonderful, the weather, of course, was wonderful. It just is a wonderful venue, and I hope that we take advantage of all kinds of events there, so that people outside of the community of the student body can appreciate how beautiful that campus is and maybe take more a part in the pride of our local high school. So I really appreciate you having the event there, and it was a beautiful night.
Thanks a lot. And come to the football games. Cheer
Yes,
on.
I might. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Any other public comments?
I'll say something. My name's Mike Owens, and I grew up here in Ojai, graduated from Nordhoff in '94. Now I'm a small business owner, and I run a hockey team. I run baseball in Oakview. I run soccer at Nordhoff. I got little kids and everything else. And now I'm a den leader for Cub Scouts. And I gotta say that when I have a niece that went to Nordhoff, and she listened to Nick speak, and she was quite moved. She was definitely quite moved. And I've heard a lot of kids say that. And I've heard some stories of kids thinking of suicide and some other desperate measures. And they found hope. And I think that in the anti-bullying scheme of things, that was right on. And that needs to be done way more often. I'm way into anti-bullying. I teach my kid Taekwondo. We go to Taekwondo Ojai Valley in order to teach him how to treat other people right and have integrity for himself. And in the Saturday night event, I went to that as well. And if there's I watched a woman fall down. She came up to the front when they did their altar call, and she fell down, and she was thrashing and crying. She had 3 kids that fell on top of her, and they were just holding her. You know, and something made that woman drop. Something in her life was broken. Something in her life was hurting. And whatever it was, I hope that, and I pray, that she found hope that night. And whether or not, I think we all know somebody like that. And whether or not, I saw couples raising their hands and crying when there was a call for healing, for physical ailment. And we had an anti-bullying speech on school district days, and secular speech, awesome, perfect. And we had this event, and the whole process of it all was all hope. Hope for a better future, hope for a better life. I need something better in my life. And that woman dropped. Who knows what she had? I think we all can come up with our own story in our mind what made her drop and crying in pain. And I think that this event, 200 threads on social media doesn't do anything for a saved life. I think that's malarkey, what that guy just said. And I would strongly encourage it. If there was I know some people that are Krishnamurti guys, and we've been in this debate recently because it's a hot topic. And I said, if you guys wanted to have an event, and you guys promoted hope, and people would come do it, so be it. Go for it. If it's at school, if it's a secular message, it's at school, it's all about hope, and it's an event that's going to be on Saturday night, it's up to me to teach my kids, to bring them up and show them what humanity is all about. And I think that what we did on Saturday night there it's not to be stopped. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
I'm Lynn Thomas. I pastor the Wesleyan Church here in Ojai, and I've been a resident of the Ojai Valley along with my family for 23 years now, and my son is a 2009 graduate of Nordhoff, and had a great experience there. 2 things. One, a family in my church who's not able to be here tonight, their son was at Matilaha, and fortunately he comes from a good family. And I asked him what he got from the talk with Nick, and he said, I didn't realize that some of my classmates struggle with suicidal thoughts and such, because there was a point where Nick asked them to raise their hand if they had those kinds of thoughts. And so this 7th grader comes away from that event with a greater awareness and sensitivity to his classmates. I wouldn't think that he would be one who would be a bully himself, I hope not, but I appreciate that he has a better awareness of what some of his classmates may be struggling with. Also, I'd like to speak to what a previous speaker spoke about with regards to the intent and the execution of this weekend event. In my understanding, the school sessions were Nick brought the anti-bullying message and stayed within acceptable boundaries as to sharing his personal journey and his motivations. And the advertising that went out throughout the community did not reference the school events. To my memory of that, I don't have a copy of that advertising with me right now. But those were 2 separate events. I appreciate the matter of trust. I live my life on trust. And I appreciate that there may be differing perspectives. I understand that. But the Saturday night event was a separate event. The advertising for that event did not connect back to the schools. And it's my understanding, though I was not there, that Nick made very clear to the students that the Saturday night event, he would be sharing his personal journey, including his faith. That's what was conveyed to me. I would stand corrected if it were otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, my name is Jason Blankenship, and I'm was a coordinator for Stand Strong the Stand Strong event. So I thought maybe for what's been said, I could speak to a bit. I'm glad that we had such a good response. Our objective was to bless our community and bless our schools. And with the Saturday morning project, laying down mulch, we had 118 volunteers on that 100-degree day out there for hours trying to beautify the high school and add some beauty. So I'm really glad that turned out so well. And the response I've heard from so many. I do also want to talk a little bit to the advertisement, in that we had an ad firm that had worked on that for us, but I did approve it looking at it. One thing I wanted to be very careful of is, because this was being mailed out to every home and P.O. box in our school district area, that I wanted to protect our principals and also this board, and that we would not have people in the community thinking that Thursdays and Fridays was a religious event happening in schools. So we tried to be careful about that. If I could do it again, though, I would add some detail that the Saturday night event would be of a spiritual nature, because those details weren't on there after going back and reflecting on it. So I would do it again differently than what we had done this time. But our objective was, first and foremost, that our schools would be able to hear a message that would help change lives. Anti-bullying is so important. I think all of us at some point in time knows what it's like to be bullied, and so I'm glad that the schools got to hear that. But I do regret that the ad that was mailed out did not stipulate something of a spiritual nature at the Saturday night event, and I would change that. But the goal was also to help keep some difference, even though Thursdays and Fridays was a completely different event than Saturday. It was still the same speaker, and people could have easily gotten confused and really caused a great deal of hardship for our school district, thinking that Thursday and Friday was a religious event nature. So that's all. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for your comments. Anything else?
Just 1 minute's worth. My name's Chad Zaka. I'm a pastor of the First Baptist Church here in town. One of the things I just want to communicate to you as a group of pastors is that we really do want to bless the community. We want to bless you all as a school system. And so we would love your feedback on opportunities for us as churches to be able to partner and to help and to do whatever it is that we can. And so I think one of the things that we experienced in working together on this event, including the campus beautification, is that we can really accomplish a lot, in partnership together. And so I just throw that out to you as an extended hand, just to say, if there are ways that we as churches in the Valley can partner together and work together with you all, we'd love to do so. So thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. Is that all? Great. Thanks for the discussion. It's time if anyone on the board would like to make a comment. It's not necessary. Okay.
I will.
Okay.
I'd like to say something.
Okay.
You want to go first, Linda?
Oh, I just, I think I'm glad that Janine spoke about, the kids' comments, and I really think that this is something that I would like to see us continue. I would like to see us invite perhaps representatives from other religious groups who have, who want to talk about bullying, who've experienced bullying. I think this is something we can certainly do that will broaden the horizons and the minds of our students and help them with their personal issues. I think this could be the beginning of something really important.
Thanks.
So, I've done a lot of thinking about this issue, and to the point where my wife was angry with me for wasting so much time. And, I never saw an email to which I didn't feel like I should respond, and I think I did respond to most of the critical ones, including some of the Facebook comments. But I want to say that, without hopefully sounding too political, I do think that there are two legitimate issues in play. And I will say, I think Thane's excellent letter in the paper probably really reflects my view pretty well crystallized. But I did want to mention a couple of other things. And the first thing is, I want to say that from the beginning, and now looking at it in retrospect, I have incredible, I'm very proud of the way the district dealt with this issue, because before this became headline news in our little town, we got an email from Hank telling us what was going on. And as I said to him at the time, I'm a lawyer, and I was asleep at the switch. I was not focused as I should have been on, hey, separation of church and state. You start hearing about a religious person who's going to speak at our schools. Let's be very, very vigilant. But the school district was. Greg Bayless was very on top of that. Mr. Rosen was very on top of that. Hank was very on top of that. And so, in our little town, notwithstanding the fact that there was some risk, the decision was made to bring Nick in because of the message that he was giving, and there was vetting done, there was talking to other school districts. I mean, a lot of work was done. So that's my first comment is that this was not the result. What happened and the disappointment of people did not result from the district being unaware of these issues. The district was well aware of these issues, and I think did a great job, within the realm of what we could do. The second thing is when it became clear that some people at the Saturday event were disappointed and felt like there had been some misleading marketing, the district could not have been more responsive. And that's one of the things that disappointed me about some of the negative comments is just give us some credit. Because guess what? That night, I think it was 1 o'clock in the morning, Greg Bayless responded to the first person critical of the event. By the morning, Jane Weil had also responded. By later in the morning, Mike Shanahan had also responded. These aren't responses that are like, how dare you? These are thoughtful responses that deal with the obviously super important issue of separation of church and state. So top to bottom, I feel like within the district, people have been super sophisticated, open-minded, aware of these issues. And that all being said, I also have to say that it is our sacred obligation, odd word sacred, to maintain the separation of church and state as a school district. So to the extent that there are lessons learned, you could joke about it, next time a guy with a secular and religious message comes to town, who will be speaking in our schools, but also, maybe there isn't a lot that will need to be informing us for any similar thing in the future. But overall, we always have to be vigilant, and this has reinforced that idea with me. And I think, as Thane said in his excellent letter, we will definitely have to and want to make our facilities available for religious groups. Not only is that appropriate, we are about information. We're about the marketplace of ideas. What's wrong with that? But hopefully in the future also the events will be marketed. I really appreciated the comment of Jason that in retrospect maybe it should have been done differently. But my first and foremost idea is kudos to the district, to Hank, to Greg, to Bill, for bringing him in and for overall the great result, just the fabulous result, these wonderful comments that we've received.
I just want to add to the end, Mr. Zaka, I love the idea of community partnership in terms of many, many things. Many, people, engineers who are retired to come in and talk about what they did and all that. And anyone in the valley who can help us encourage that, I'm all for.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Linda said. I think that we've touched on a well of need that I'm not sure we were aware completely existed. I have extreme personal familiarity with bullying and all kinds of stuff, and it is an extremely important thing. It short circuits learning. It creates a culture of repression and dishonesty that is simply unacceptable in a district like this. And so, frankly, when I look at this, I look to see, well, what was the effect on the kids? Did we benefit? And we did. So, personally, I absolutely want to see this continue. And I don't care who has the right message. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. If what you're saying to our kids is appropriate and necessary, I want it said. That being said, overlap concerns me. And I know that we will be vigilant about that in the future. But I don't want any concern that we can deal with to stop this positive message getting to our kids. So I absolutely wholeheartedly support that, and I will also be looking to see that this is repeated on a continuous basis.
Just a couple of thoughts, not to get the last word. I think maybe even I'll be the last one to speak, so there's a difference between the two. First of all, I want to say something to Jason. I really appreciate not just the words that you said, but the tone. I thought it was spot on. I had a chance to meet with Paul. I met him actually a couple of years ago. He and I met last week, and his tone's a little different. But, he also has some real passion for his beliefs. But there's one thing I want to share, and I said this, I don't know, probably 10 times to the board over the last several weeks, or at least since that Thursday, Friday, Saturday event. I think not only is it purposeful double negative, not only was there no hardship to the district, but quite honestly, while I appreciate the accolades, we, and I know Bill and Greg would agree with me, we're getting way more credit than we deserve. Because frankly, all we did was say, yes, bring him on. Bring him on. Wasn't our idea to bring him here, right? And to tell the truth, I'm thrilled that he was here, and I want to second what Mike said. We're about a lot of people, but ultimately we're about 4 to 22-year-olds. And so they were the key beneficiaries in that middle group, right, sort of 12 to 18. They were the beneficiaries of this. Certainly, there were some adults who came to the Saturday night event, and once it unfolded, felt fill in the blank, right? A lot of people felt great, and I think that the story, that you told about Mom and the kids is incredibly compelling. Some were upset because they came not knowing what they were going to hear. And I completely agree that you shouldn't have to go on somebody's website to figure out what he's going to say. Right? And yes, that's why I thought your comments were so on point, Jason, that, so we all learn. I'm sure the next time the advertising will be different. Okay? But ultimately, when I reflect on this, and when I think about the conversations I had with Greg and Bill and Janine, what matters most to me is that the kind of stories that Janine talked about are just a very, very small tip of the iceberg. Right? And in fact, just to put a factual period on my comments, we are now 111 emails and counting. It's probably not over yet, but I think maybe we're getting to the back end. Right? And 96% of them were positive. Now, I'm certain, I don't do Facebook purposely. Okay, I get enough input without it. Okay? But I have people around me who do Facebook. Okay, I won't name them, but they do. And I absolutely know that what Paul says, I'm sure is true. That a big part of the chatter was about that issue of we came, we didn't know we were going to see, and all that. So I'm just telling you that of those people who put a name on an email that sent it to me or Bill or Greg, a couple to Janine, all of them went to the board. So there's a stack like this. 96% were in some form positive. I'd say almost all talking about Thursday and Friday. Very few about Saturday. Because I think those people distinguished the difference between Saturday and Thursday and Friday. Okay? So, when I look back on that September event, I'm going to think almost all wonderful things, and very appreciative of the people who thought about bringing it here.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate very much all of your comments and the comments from the board and our superintendent. I think I've said enough in the newspapers and on Facebook and other places, but what strikes me at this moment is how the community can come together and work on something. And I just wish that we did this on a lot of other things. So keep it coming, and hopefully there'll be a lot of good things in the future. So thanks a lot. I appreciate your being here for that. We're going to move on to item 6.2, the Smarter Balanced Assessment.
So 3:30 this afternoon, Jackie Law, who will introduce herself in a minute, Marilyn Smith, who comes to almost as many board meetings as I do, the three of us met together to just talk about this agenda item. I think it's important to plan. Of course, I didn't need to do that because they'd already figured everything out. But we also knew that this was going to be not quite as exciting as the predecessor agenda item. But this is part of what we do too, called assessing students' performance. This is going to be 90+% their show. But what I'd like to do is just put in context and put in a chronological order what's happening tonight and then what's happening after tonight on the way to the November 17th board meeting. So I won't go into everything, all things Smarter Balanced and all things Common Core. We've spent hours and hours at this table talking about it, and there'll be a bit more coming up. What I want to underscore is that tonight we're going to take a look at where the district is in its unfolding of looking at the spring performance of our students, academic performance in a couple of areas, math and ELA in particular. And the purpose of tonight is not only just to focus on some numbers very, very briefly, many more numbers to come in November, but just to explain that after tonight, over the next 3 days or so, we'll be preparing, and the principals will be preparing, materials to send out to parents which show the students' performance from last spring. It'll be a cover letter, which I'll sign, but as usual, Marilyn's doing work, and I'll read it, edit it, and basically say, great job. But in any case, there will be this introduction to the parents receiving the documents. That will come later this week, after tonight, when Marilyn and Jackie talk about the concept of Smarter Balanced testing. Then on October 12th, so coming right up, next Monday, many teachers predominantly, some classified staff too, principals, others, will be talking about how to interpret the results that we have now received from last spring. And so that's called sort of professional in-service, learning together, how we can communicate what these numbers mean, because these are the first numbers of this type. They're not the numbers that parents are used to seeing from the old state tests, and Jackie and Marilyn will be talking about that in the next several minutes. That's October 12th. And then we have this month or so to generate reports for the board, that the compendium of which will be the November 17th presentation on the spring tests. And we'll talk about how the kids did. Now, you can tell in totality how they did tonight just by a sterile number, right? It's a number. And as you'll see, the numbers, the board already knows this, the numbers pretty well parallel Ventura County, our numbers, pretty well parallel Ventura County and the state, which, by the way, now I get out of their way, is almost exactly where we were with the spring 2013 tests in the old system. We were right at the county level, a little better than the state, but not too far from the state. And that's just sort of how we test. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but sort of how we test. Hopefully better in the upcoming years, but that's how we tested. In 13, there were no data. In 14, right, because we're all sort of warming up. We warmed up to take the test. In the spring of 2014, therefore there was no report in October or November of 2014, but here we are in the Smarter Balanced Common Core era. So that's the introduction, okay, and these are the two people who've been leading our standardized testing program through Smarter Balanced.
Okay.
I'm Marilyn Smith. Josh, is there a way to turn the fan down a little bit so it's not quite so strong?
I think it's either off or on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't switch it off for a while.
Yeah, that would be fine, sure. It should be cooler out.
All right, well, we can project, you know, we're.
We don't have that interim stuff.
We've been in the-
Dennis, is there some way to get that in memory care? That's our good. Good.
All right, I'm Marilyn Smith. I'm the Director of Elementary Curriculum and the Director of Special Projects. So this kind of falls into special projects. As we think about, as you listen tonight to the presentation, you will hear a recurring theme of college and career readiness. So that's really pervasive through the report. Over the last several decades, educational reform has really been reflected in our assessment expectations. So when I first started teaching in 1969, in the 70s and the 80s, the focus was really on minimum competency. We wanted all our students to have minimum competency. Then along came No Child Left Behind and the Elementary Secondary Education Act, ESEA. So mandated by No Child Left Behind in the 1990s and the 2000s, the expectation was proficiency. We wanted all students to be proficient in mathematics and English language arts. Today, 2015, here we are, and now the focus is on college and career readiness. We really want to measure individual student progress to ensure that students have those complex thinking skills for career and college readiness. We have to operate under two systems, the state system and the federal system. When we think of the state system, we think Academic Performance Index, API. That's the state system. The federal system is Adequate Yearly Progress, AYP. So API is the state, AYP is the federal. Federal falls under NCLB, No Child Left Behind. And the federal, AYP, ESEA, it's in committee now. They're all legislators. They're always talking about reauthorizing NCLB. We don't know if it'll ever happen, but it's in committee. In the California system, the state system, our accountability system is currently under transition. It's really being crafted to something new. The API will change. For example, there was a bill that passed, SB 1458, that changed the high school API. Instead of just an assessment indicator, now it's going to have college and career indicators, attendance rate, grad rate, dropout rate. You might have suspensions, so different indicators, so it's a little broader. LCAP, Local Control Accountability Plan, will also play a role. Now remember, that's part of our local control accountability system. And as we know, the LCAP includes a lot of those things. School climate, we're going to be looking at school climate, suspension rate, dropout rate, grad rate, attendance rate. So California's accountability system is really in transition. California has also substituted the Smarter Balance test, which we took in the spring 2015, for the old California Standards test, the CSTs. And actually, eventually, it might even replace the California High School exit exam.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm Jackie Law, for those of you that don't know me. I'm the interim special ed director for the district, and I work in the district testing role as well with Marilyn. So we're here tonight to share this transition with you. So as Marilyn just said, we are moving from the CST into the Smarter Balance. That's the transition. And one of the criticisms, one of the criticisms of the CST test is that it didn't measure the day-to-day student learning, and it didn't measure skills that were needed for real-world applications. And so the Smarter Balance assessment provides a more balanced approach to instruction and assessment. It creates a more balanced educational cycle, starting with the common core standards, all leading to career and college readiness, which are all tied to instruction, and then including common tools for measuring learning, such as the interim and the formative assessments, for progress monitoring of the day-to-day learning, and all of that leading to the computer-based summative assessment given each spring. And so this balanced instructional cycle is more applicable to today's workplace. So for example, now along with testing a student's ability to read a story for comprehension, they're also asked to cite evidence and draw logical conclusions. And rather than just picking a multiple choice answer on a math problem, they're asked to use the math to solve real world problems on the new assessments. So on this slide, you can see the scores that we recently received. We got some of our scores for the district, and this slide shows that, as Hank has already said, the students in Ojai on average are very similar in scores throughout the state and the county in English language arts, with scores in grades 6 through 8 being higher. And the way it works is for each grade level and subject area, students receive a score from between 2,000 and 3,000. And the overall score falls into 4 achievement levels, which measure mastery and the likeliness of success in future related coursework. So the first level is standard exceeded. And standard exceeded means that the student has exceeded the achievement standard and demonstrates advanced progress. Then there's standards met. Standards met means that the student has met the achievement standard and demonstrates progress. And for the scores on this slide, the standard exceeded and the standard met scores are combined. So for the overall score, for example, of 11th grade, 51% of our students either met or exceeded standards. And that's what our goal is always, to either meet or exceed standards. There's also a level called standards nearly met. And this is when students nearly meet the standard, but they still need some demonstration of mastery and more development to be able to demonstrate that mastery. And then the last one is standard not met, where the student has not met the achievement standard and needs substantial improvement for mastery and success in any future related coursework.
As you look at the math slide, you can see, again, as Jackie mentioned, it's really, OUSD is really kind of a microcosm of the county and the state. We had some real bright spots. I'm glad Bill Rosen is here, because the bright spots were grade 7 and grade 8. And you can see they did a little bit better. The results from the Smarter Balanced Assessment provide just one piece of information. It's information about a student's academic progress, but that information can do a lot of things. One, it can help facilitate conversations between parents and teachers about student performance. It can serve as a tool to help parents and teachers work together to help support students. It can really help schools and school districts identify strengths and areas that need work and to improve their educational programs. And lastly, any scores can provide the public, policymakers, with information about student achievement.
So the test is different. In contrast to the CST, which was a multiple choice test, paper-based, students would bubble and answer. They all had the same questions, and they were sometimes able to guess more easily at correct answers. The new test consists of 2 parts. First, it's a computer adaptive test, which gives students questions, and then the follow-up questions are based on how the students answer. So for example, if a student gets several correct answers, they're going to be led down a different pathway with different questions than a student who has gotten incorrect answers. And so by this, with the follow-up questions being more directed to their level, it provides a more refined picture of their ability. And secondly is the performance task, where it challenges students to apply their knowledge with skills, showing their skills for real world applications. And so these 2 parts together in this assessment measure understanding, written expression, problem solving, research, and so it is a much more complex test. But it's also assesses the right things and provides us with the kind of feedback that we need. And because the things that we want students to know and be able to do have changed, our tests have to change also. And the rigor of the state's new academic standards are seen in the new state scores that you saw tonight. we can see from the scores that we do have work to do to get all of our students to either exceed or meet the standards. But we have also a balanced assessment tool that can assess the students and aid teachers in adjusting instruction throughout the instructional cycle. And so this instruction leads to crucial real-life abilities such as analyzing problems, thinking independently, writing clearly with evidence. And so this test sends the message that those skills take time and effort to master, but they are essential to succeed in today's technological world.
So, in about a week or so, as Hank mentioned, the parents and families will be getting their score reports. Those score reports will include some detailed information about strengths, things on which students need to work. And in the 11th grade score report, it will give indicators of, is this student ready for college level work? So they're pretty detailed. This year's scores, really, as Jackie mentioned, they're really a baseline for the progress that we expect students to make over time. Parents can go to websites and find things, but we'll get that in a minute, Jackie. But these new exams are really part of California's comprehensive plan for supporting high-quality learning. That's what it's all about. And remember, that began in 2010 when we adopted the Common Core State Standards. The tests are based on really more challenging academic standards, but they're designed to help students be college and career ready. The tests include a wider variety of questions, as Jackie mentioned, not the multiple choice, but I have to emphasize, these tests are really an academic checkup. It's like going to the doctor for your annual physical. They're a checkup. They're one gauge of student progress. I think teachers will use the test results to set learning goals for students for the year, and I really hope that parents feel impassioned enough to take active part in discussion with their teacher, their child's teacher, about those learning goals. I think that's a real opportunity. Okay. There's a score report that we're going to show you.
Time for the movie? Time for the movie?
I thought I had to remember that.
Yes, it's time for the movie. Let's look at a score report from a parent's perspective.
You got some...
Understanding the CAS Individual Student Score Report. This video will help you and your child learn about California's new Student Score Report of end-year standardized test results. Approximately 8 weeks after all of the students in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11 in your school district finish testing, the district will receive a student score report for each student. These printed reports will be mailed to families during the summer or soon after the new school year starts. There are 2 pages to each student's report. The first page shows the overall performance on the new Smarter Balance tests in English Language Arts, Literacy, and in Mathematics. The second page provides more detailed information and other test results. Let's look at the first page of Emily Johnson's Student Score Report. The report includes a brief letter from the State Superintendent of Public Instruction explaining California's new assessments and what they mean for your child. Depending on your child's grade level, this letter may be different. This section shows Emily's student number, date of birth, grade, test date, and the name of the student's school and district. At the bottom of page 1, we find Emily's overall scores. Her English Language Arts Literacy overall score is 2553, and her overall score in Mathematics is 2458. These scores are designed to show each student's performance on new computer-based tests that replace the former paper-based tests. This year's scores are the baseline for showing growth in future years. Each student's score will fall into an achievement level that helps us understand where the student is on the path to learn skills needed for college and career. Standard not met, standard nearly met, standard met, standard exceeded. Around the overall score is a bar that shows the range of possible scores your child would likely achieve if he or she were to take the test several times. To the right of the overall score graphic is language that describes how well your child did on these tests. The upper part of the second page provides more information about the new tests. The lower part of the second page provides more detail about Emily's overall scores. The English Language Arts Literacy overall score breaks down into the 4 areas of writing, reading, research inquiry, and listening. The Mathematics overall score breaks down into 3 areas of communicating reasoning, problem solving and modeling data analysis, and concepts and procedures. Student performance in each of these areas is reported as either below standard, at or near standard, or above standard. For a 5th, 8th, or 10th grade student, the report will include test results for science. For an 11th grade student, the report includes an early assessment program status, which describes how the achievement levels from this assessment relate to level of readiness for college-level English and mathematics courses. Thank you for viewing this resource provided by the California Department of Education. Be sure to check our web pages as we continue to develop resources to support your child's success. This link is available on the CDE website, and it's also in Spanish, so it's available in both languages. I think parents really need to know that based on that field test that we had in California in 2014 and other states, and then 2015, most students will need to make significant progress to reach the standards set for math and literacy that accompany college and career readiness. And this is what Tom Torlakson said, and I'm going to quote. He's the state superintendent of public instruction. "No one should be discouraged by the scores. They can help guide discussion among students, parents, and teachers to help schools adjust instruction to meet student needs."
So moving forward, we see a shift. And moving forward, it's tempting to look back. But remember that the new tests are too fundamentally different than the old tests to make any reliable comparison between the old scores. But we can compare the focus. And Smarter Balance moves us from a test and judge assessment focus into a support and improve assessment focus. So this year's results establish our new baseline in which we will be working and progressing towards having our students make progress over time. And the transition to this new accountability system includes the more balanced assessment for the instructional cycle, and it also represents an opportunity. It's an opportunity to focus on the needs of the students and support teachers and schools in their work to achieve the college and career readiness in today's technological society. Thank you.
Just add one thing to affirm what Jackie said at the end. You know, I can send you, it's easy to send you the numbers from the last test, 2013, but I can just tell you in a sentence that the kind of met or exceeded percentages you see here, you know, across the state are about 20% less, well, 20 numbers percent less than you would have seen 2 years ago. That's not 20% less, but if you're seeing 30s and 40s, the more typical numbers would have been 50s and 60s. Okay? But that's everybody. Everybody's, and the prediction is that these numbers will increase for a variety of reasons. Obviously, teachers will have a better handle on the kind of instructional modalities that will be most successful. Students are going to get better at taking the test. The whole process will improve. So I would predict that some number of years from now, you know, these situations where you have 2 out of every 3 students in mathematics not meeting or exceeding, that will get closer, that's not great, but it'll be closer to half, okay, than 2/3. And the 45% in language arts might look something more like 55%. It's going to take some time. And you two did a great job, and I'm glad I just turned it over to you.
Do you have questions? Does the board have questions?
Anybody?
Yes. A couple of questions. My first one being, I'm not really sure, and maybe after Monday's in-service, a teacher could show us how this number helps more than the other number. I mean, you know, because your child always had a number.
I mean, the 2,500 thing, the big
Well, I mean, how does the Smarter Balance help any more than the STAR testing? Because unless it's that you're seeing these students take that different path you were talking about, and therefore you're able, because, I mean, both the old test and the new test, they put the student somewhere and the teacher sees where that student is, but how does this help more than the other number?
Okay.
I mean, you might not know.
No, I think with this, you have a whole instructional cycle, and you have the progress monitoring, things that are built in, that are part of this, and everything is more of a global picture, whereas with the CST, you get the number, and teachers when I taught, I felt like it was a snapshot of things that I didn't necessarily always teach, and it didn't necessarily reflect what we wanted students to know. It was just some standardized questions. So I feel like this is meant to be more of a whole picture, and also meant to be tied to real-world application, real classroom application, and day-to-day learning.
Then my second question, or not, it's not a question, it's just a comment. My frustration always with the education system is that I don't want to see numbers in the 30s and 40s. I don't want to see numbers in the 50s. And I know, having been in the classroom, there's a lot of wonderful things going on in the classroom. So how do we reach those students who are scoring at the not met? And how are we, I mean, I like to see, okay, this student was not met in second grade, but look how they're not, I like to look at the student and say, students are improving. Maybe our second grade hasn't changed from over 3 years, but the second grade, I mean, this is one thing I look at here. It's like, if you go third, fourth, fifth, sixth, every year it's going up. That means the longer the students are in our system, the better they're getting. And that's progress. That's something that for me says, okay, by the time they're at Matilla, they're improving. They're not improving enough, but so we're on a path. But I would love us to find a way to improve that. But I think it'll be interesting to see if what you mentioned, I highlighted it here, the meaningful feedback helps us actually do that or not.
Well, it's going to be a work in progress. I mean, and I agree that it is nice to see that. It's better than the alternative, right? I mean, I've been in situations where the longer you were in, the lower the numbers got. You know? Some of it has to do with the test itself, and I'm not diminishing for a minute all the great things that happen in Matilla, but there are certain ages and certain types of questions where a student, for example, a 12, 13-year-old might be more adept at handling that particular question. Of course, we know it's only in the spring of 2015, so it's not like a long-term thing. More adept at handling the question than an 8-year-old, right? And that's one of the things we know about these tests. The one thing that we haven't talked about, and we'll spend much more time on November 17th, the biggest difference, particularly in mathematics, between these tests and the old tests is the amount of reading. And so there's some real challenges out there for students who might be really bright but aren't that facile, right, in the English language. And that particular focus, which I happen to think is great because you don't do math in an isolation, that has exacerbated some situations across the county. And just the last thing I'll tell you is that, not surprisingly, the districts that did great on the CSTs are doing the best, not great, but the best on these tests. Right? And it's that reading component, I think, ultimately, that we're really going to have to get our arms around. Because isn't that, I mean, that's the nature of these tests.
Yes, and we've just given you a bare snapshot of the ELA and the mathematics on the November 17th. I will tell you that ELA, English Language Arts, has 4 subtests: reading, writing, listening, and inquiry and research. And students get scores in those, they're called claims. And so it's much more refined.
Curious about differences, that's a huge difference.
That's a huge difference than the CST, to which Jackie referred, one number.
That's it.
But now the teacher's going to get, how did the students do in listening, reading, writing, and research and inquiry?
And on mathematics.
And mathematics,
we'll be talking
and
about-
I didn't want to bring up mathematics because I don't have it on the top of my
That's
head. It's 3 claims, but I,
Doesn't matter. The point is that in order to be successful.
We were in the movie.
Yeah. Be successful, you have to be able to do more than compute.
that's
So we
right.
should know too.
I mean, one is problem solving, obviously, but there are 3 claims under mathematics. So the scores will be much more refined.
Linda?
So the lack or the needs of improvement in literacy will be reflected in the math scores also.
It is.
Because, and that's really, I think that's really important. And I love the analysis of how there were the 4 scores for the English language arts and the fact that the research category, the inquiry category is just as
Research and
important
inquiry. Very.
as everything else. Because if you don't know how to acquire your information, you're kind of lost. And I think so. This is. I'm really excited about this, and I'm excited too that we're not testing 9th and 10th graders. I mean, is there a plan to test 9th and 10th graders? That's great
No.
because I just thinking back about when we were having the economic problems and we had, losing teachers and furlough days, and we were still testing. So this is great that kids are going to have a little bit of a respite. So and focus on learning.
And we're hopeful at some point that the 11th grade test can replace the exit exam.
That would be fabulous. That'd be fabulous. Maybe even the SAT.
Kevin, Jim? Yeah, just a couple. So, to begin with, how did our district transition to Common Core versus other school districts, in our view? I mean, did we do it in the same time frame? I mean, so through this testing process, are we kind of comparing apples to apples when our kids tested, or might there have been some kids at other districts who had had more familiarity with Common Core and might have had an advantage in that respect?
Some districts in the county may have been a year ahead.
And so that would obviously be important.
That's just
to-
anecdotal
yeah.
though, Kevin, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And some did pilot the test prior, so they would have had 1 year's experience. Their students
right.
would have had 1 year's experience with the format of the test, which takes some time to get used to.
And does our district have plans to, and I'm sure this is my first year on the board, so I'm sure over the years, we used whatever testing was available to do as much as we could to understand what's going on with our students. Are we going to break this out by, income group? Are we going to try to identify certain groups that are doing better than others? Or we're just going to leave it to the teachers? Or how's that all going to work?
That's all built into the system. We'll be able to pull out those disaggregated groups and find out who did what and where the gaps are and all of that. So we'll use the data to help us with all of that.
And then is there a formal process that we have planned for the teachers to utilize this information? Like, right now, obviously, they got their plates full for the most part. They've got stuff that they've got to teach. Is there going to be, now we're going to add a half an hour or an hour for you to utilize this information to help the kids in the specific areas where they need help? Or is it going to be more...
I don't know about a specific plan, but I can tell you
On the
that the
fly.
teachers are really excellent about analyzing data and using it to drive their instruction. They've already been doing that for a long time, and they're very skilled at it. This will just give them a different set of data to use. So as far as a plan...
I think the answer, Kevin, is that teachers have always had how they use it. I won't say it's completely central to the individual teacher, but it's a big part of it. So I don't see this as being much of an add-on. I just think it's different. It's going to be more work in the early years because it's different. I think as this era unfolds, back in that sort of 5-year period, that 5 years down the road, that our teachers will be far more facile with the utilization of these data than they were with the old data, because I frankly think they got tired of it. And I just do. I think they found it, sort of like James saying, you end up seeing a number, but it doesn't tell you what you need to know. And it tells you that year, your student in the next year group had a problem. But this is so much richer. So yeah, I think it is more work, but I think it's worth it.
Is there any in-service day that will be devoted towards
understanding this stuff?
October 12th, a good part of it, not all of it. We have a lot of things going on. I wrote an email, I sent you a copy in the Friday report. But I sent an email out yesterday, actually, just sort of talking about what's happening on the 12th. Actually, Janine is part of the program. We're going to take another look at sort of the same issues we talked about in the first hour. Not K-12, but in certain parts of the K-12 system. We have a lot of technology training that still needs to be done. David Rogers is doing that. I know Bill is personally very involved in taking a look at data and technology and sort of merging the two. So there'll be some of that going on in Attila. What we try to do in these Institute days, of which we've had very few, really very few, sometimes none, after we get started in the year, is to try to combine some overall training on key issues with a decentralized time to let the school, the departments in the secondary schools, big part special education group, mostly teaching assistants, a lot of them, to have time to do exactly what we're talking about. To look at important data and see what can be achieved by changing some pedagogies. So the answer is yes. And we also have early releases, right? So we have Wednesdays in the elementary schools and junior high. We have actually a different time at the high school now than we used to. A lot of time that Greg has given them to look at a teaching technique. So not a lot of days, but parts of days.
And just a question, because of the quote-unquote richer data that you're getting back, I see that theoretically you could use it in two ways, right? You can track down the individual students whose needs extra attention, and then you can look at your overall curriculum delivery and see if there's some calibration that can be made. So I want to make sure I understand, is it that this data more accurately aligns to the curriculum as it's being developed, and so it's more relevant to that? How is it going to help you calibrate moving forward in the development of the curriculum and the delivery? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's kind of along with Kevin's line. And I heard it's up to the individual instructor, but surely there's more of a global approach.
Well, in mathematics, we all have a Common Core aligned, textbooks. So, but this is the first year, the integrated math 1, 2, and 3, and 4 at Nordhoff, the CMP 3 for grades 6, 7, and 8, and the bridges for grades K through 5. So it's going to take some time for students to be able to do what's expected in mathematics to have it reflected on the Smarter Balanced. We're behind in English language arts. Everybody's behind.
We're all behind. So the answer is it's frustrating because, it's sort of like the cart's sort of in front of the horse, but we're not sure what the horse is.
That's what I'm wondering.
Well, no, it's a fair question. I mean, okay, so Common Core is a reality. California's all in, right? There's some states that are half in or hardly at all, right? So California's all in on Common Core. I feel about Common Core. I'm a passionate advocate because I think over time it's going to be great. However, we also know that the textbooks aren't here yet. We got the math as soon as we can get the math, so we're there. And Kevin and I were actually sort of communicating about this over the last couple of days. The fact is that in language arts, in social studies, in science, which may come next, it will be years before a superintendent could sit in any chair and say there's alignment across all of the areas among the Smarter Balanced testing, the curriculum, and what's going on in the classroom. So, we're forging ahead, but the teachers are always going to be supplementing or creating materials to have the students be ready to take the next spring's test when there aren't those textbooks available yet.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, in a perfect world, it would all come together. It didn't. But I'm glad the world's here. It's not perfectly organized.
I just want to follow up on that question. The feedback, what does that really look like? Is it just the student scores? in those 4 or 3 categories? Or is there more in-depth information about research? Kids don't know how to Google it, they don't know the Dewey Decimal System.
No, I wish.
See, I'm old.
Okay. In the ELA, 4 claims, and as Jackie mentioned, there are 4 achievement level descriptors. In the claims, there are just 3 achievement level descriptors. So the exceeded and met is in 1, and then nearly met, and then didn't meet. But I wish there was more information. But
Okay, it's just the scores. Okay.
So it'll be up to the teacher then to figure out.
Well, we get a description of what does it mean.
Yeah.
What's the description of the achievement level descriptor?
Right, but that's just words.
Yeah, yeah, and it was frustrating because we're also working on a report card, and it's that same kind of thing. We need to know, what is the most important standard, and where is it tested? So it's.
But actually, on the STAR test, you used to be able to see, like, here was your geometry questions, you missed 4 out of 10. Here was your statistics questions, you got 9 out of 10. Here was your algebra. That was some sort of a breakdown. Is that not what happens here? So you don't even sort of say, oh, this student is struggling with geometry, but they're doing great in algebra.
Well, but you'd be able to tell within the 4 groupings.
Yes, within the.
Within the 4 ELA and 3 NAP.
In the
Because you have
claims.
sub-scores, don't you have sub-scores?
Yes, you
for
have
each of those 10
sub-scores in the
areas?
claims.
Yeah, the question is whether we know what those mean.
Well.
Yeah.
Right, so there's that question. Now, I'm not super concerned about the score levels necessarily, because I know in years past with STAR, they would go up a little, everybody in the state went up a little, they would go down a little bit. We were kind of on that wave, and so it meant to me that it was more about the people writing the test than the people taking the test. That was my feeling. But I am concerned that based on this information we have, somebody in some dark room somewhere thinks that the students in California and Ventura County and the Ojai Unified School District, half of them don't know enough to be meeting the standards. And so I'm wondering if there's a way we can find out what it is they think we should know.
I think this was looked at as kind of like the pre-test, like let's get the baseline, let's see what they do know, because if all the books aren't in and everything isn't happening the way Dr. Bangser described.
Well, hopefully they tell us more.
Well, and of course, the initial reaction from the editorial writers and the whiners is that how terrible is all this? Tom Torlakson, extended. Right. But he said, pretty much what Jackie said, don't be discouraged, it'll get better. It's first year, and then it'll have a new story next year.
Right. Oh, sure. No, there's always, it's Sacramento.
Well, I think you're right, Dan. I mean, it's one thing, a teacher can say, this class is moving through, and I generally feel this group knows, we're in 4th grade, they know their fractions, they know this is what I'm supposed to be teaching in 4th grade, and as a group, they generally are getting there. And then they take this test that's not testing them on those 4th grade things. Right. And that's what we don't really know. If the teacher says, this student is completing the 4th grade curriculum, and the test is testing them on 6th grade curriculum, it doesn't make any sense. So that's maybe what the Smarter Balance test needs to figure out.
Well, and those teachers will know way more in the spring of 2016 than they know, in the fall of 2016 than they know now. They're literally for the first time looking at these now. And so they're going to work with it during the course of the year, and then those kids will take the test in the spring of 2016, and then we get those results back, right? And then we reflect on the 2015-16 year.
Okay, let me back up, because I think I have, go back to slide 3. The arrows, the one with the cycle. And I think that will kind of alleviate or answer some of the concern. We have what are called interim assessments Now, remember, the Smarter Balance test in the spring is a summative assessment. Okay, what did they do all year, and you know, how did they master it? Do they have the knowledge? But we have something called interim assessments. They're still produced by Smarter Balanced, and teachers are using those interim assessments as formative assessments all along. So if the teacher, fifth grade teacher, asks, gosh, I wonder if they really understood that part about decimals or whatever it is. And he or she can give the interim assessment and it really breaks it down. So then they know where those gaps are. It's not like we're operating blindly. We know where those gaps are. And the interim assessments and then something called the digital library are both funded through the state. Right now, it's really underutilized statewide. Teachers aren't using it as much, but we're really making an effort to make teachers aware of the digital library, which is a place where they can go for resources, and the interim assessments, because that really gives good benchmarks. They're like benchmark assessments along the way. And I think that's what will inform instruction.
Great. Well, we really appreciate you staying.
Just a quick one on the interim assessments. Is that a situation where you got to, I think your example suggested, you kind of pick an area, or is that something that you could realistically take all available interim assessments and really get a sense of where they are, or there's so many interim assessments that you have to pick and choose?
I don't know.
Okay. And do the teachers see the questions? Do the teachers, because with these new times, the teachers used to be able to look at the questions and know what the questions were. But the computers, do they even know what the questions are?
They have samples.
Okay.
And the interim assessments also have a performance part of the interim assessment too. So it's just like the Smarter Balanced. You have the first part and then you have the second part, which is the performance part.
Did you have something?
I just was gonna. Bill and I talked about it today. We've been burning up the lines talking about all of this.
We're open to any help we can get here.
Well, the interim assessments, there's I'll talk a lot more about this maybe on the 17th, but there are two kinds. There's a comprehensive one, and then there are blocks. You can take a sample Smarter Balance test similar to what you would take in May, and it's a comprehensive one, and it can be scored via the computer, and as long as it's an objective one, kind of a test. And then there are blocks you can take. You can say, I want to focus on fractions or decimals, and you can do that, and it's a smaller test. And really, it's a formative test, which just allows the teacher to derive information that informs the teacher about what to do in terms of instruction maybe tomorrow or the next day. And that's an area that Marilyn and I have been talking about, that we need some time to be able to make sure our teachers really learn that technology, because there's a learning curve on this one. This is not a real simple kind of a thing. It's good, powerful, but we were talking about where we might be able to find some time and resources to make that happen.
It's hard too. You don't want examination overload. You want them to still treat the main event as the main event too. So it's hard.
And everybody across the state is experiencing the same exact thing.
Right. We'll try not to be discouraged, but
No, we're not.
We're not. Promise, we're not.
Tom Furlickson said not to.
But I do hear frustration from parents who don't feel like they can help their kids.
Oh, that's right.
And I mean, it's a tough situation. So thanks for your insights. Thanks for staying on top of it. And yeah, we'll look forward to hearing more.
Okay.
So thank you. All right. Moving on to item 7.1.1, the CSEA agreement has been negotiated, and we are supposed to have a open hearing, a public hearing on that item before we take an action to approve the contract.
I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Are there any comments? Sure.
I'm Chuck Crawford, president with the CSEA Chapter 333. We had a delay in the process. As I spoke with you at the last meeting, we're doing a complete contract, and it goes through our legal department, and it came back in the middle with one word right in the middle of the document, which had an entirely different effect. We caught it. It had to go back. It went back as a PDF, which you can't do because PDFs you can't edit. So we learned that. So anyhow, we're holding the vote and discussion this Friday in this room. So we'll have results ratified by the chapter by this Friday.
Great. All right, thank you. Are there any other comments? Great, then we will close the public hearing. I think, do we need a vote? Yeah, closing it? Let's have a
I
public
move to
vote.
close the public hearing.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, the public hearing is closed. Are there any comments on the action to approve?
Maybe give Andy a minute to summarize the work that was done with Chuck and with the team.
And we would like to thank both Chuck and Andy for your great work and well, all your team in working on this.
Thank you. We talked last month and you approved the MOU that allowed CSA to be entitled to the same salary enhancement that the rest of the staff for Ohio Unified receive. What you have before you today for approval is the renewing of the full contract term. We actually are not doing a 36-month term like we've done in the past. We're narrowing it down to 32-month, anticipating that thereafter we'll go back to 36 months, but having the term coincide with the end of the fiscal year, the end of the school year, the same time as OFT's ends, which is on June 30th, rather than the current time of October 31. Three most important issues that were additions to the contract for this upcoming term. One that I'm really excited about is that we are able to now offer, we're negotiating offering benefits, medical benefits to employees who work at least 6 hours a day. So we call that 75% of a full-time equivalency or 0.75 FTE. So the district will now be offering 75% of the contribution toward the cost of an ACA qualifying healthcare plan for those employees. So it allows us to be compliant with ACA as well as just allows us to offer further medical benefits or further benefits to employees who previously weren't entitled. We anticipate about 28 employees who are impacted by this who will now be offered benefits, medical benefits that didn't previously. So really an exciting thing to be able to extend to more of our employees. We also, the other two are really not policy changes, but just provide some clarifying language. You'll see in your literature, previously the information on evaluations was rather vague and about a paragraph long. We now have added about 2 pages of language that really give more depth as to the expectations of the evaluation. Specifically, if there's something truly negative that's going to occur in the evaluation, that no employee should be surprised in that meeting of the evaluation, that there's going to be opportunities to speak between the supervisor and employee before the actual information finds its way to the formal evaluation. It gives a few more protocols as far as follow-up and recourse following that evaluation, but again, it really is not a sizable shift in the policy, but really just a clarification. Similarly, on discipline, that's the other one that we added a lot of language to. We already were following progressive discipline guidelines. This just gives a really nice tool for supervisors as well as for the CSEA staff to really have a good understanding, a clear place to go on knowing the steps that are part of progressive discipline. So those are the main 3 areas that were negotiated.
Great, thank you.
And the change in the health insurance, was that already included in the budget we had voted on?
That was, so we include a $100,000 expenditure for that in all 3 years that we approved on June 30th. The actual cost per employee is going to be about $4,400 to the district. Like I said, we have about 28 employees who are eligible. We're not anticipating all 28 will take advantage of this offer, and so that's where we get to the $100,000 item, but it is currently in the budget.
Would we have been afoul of the Affordable Care Act without this?
So we are getting to the time where we had to make a decision. The penalty for not having a qualifying plan available to these employees would have been a $3,000 per employee fine that we'd be paying. So we had to figure something out. What we offered was more generous than was the minimum requirement as far as what the district wanted to provide to the employees. So there were a few tiers of lower options, but we felt this was one that was really the most fair, most appropriate, and was really going to try to help these employees find an opportunity for the first time to have medical benefits through their employment with us.
Yay.
Yeah. Another quick one.
Sure.
Do we get this through that same sort of joint consortium that we use for other health insurance, or is this off the shelf from somewhere?
This is also through CISC, which is what we have the rest of our plans through. So we currently have 3 medical plan options: Kaiser HMO, Anthem HMO, and PPO. This will now be a 4th option that's run through CISC. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
I just want to say, as an HR guy, I really like the expanded evaluation and progressive discipline. I think even though we're doing it, it's always good to make a public statement. So
Absolutely.
congratulations. I think it's well crafted.
As a non-HR guy.
If there's nothing else, is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
A second.
All in favor? Great. We look forward to working with you in the future, Chuck.
And hearing about grass.
Trees.
All right, item 7.3.1, sufficiency of textbooks and our instructional materials. We're required to have this vote every year. They have the word sufficiency here. I don't think it means what we think that means. In terms of, we've heard the concerns about that the textbooks are not fully aligned with the future curriculum, so that is a concern, but this vote is more, do you want to explain it?
Just for a minute. So, that's fair enough. There are 2 things going on here. One is, 3 things. One, you have to have public hearing. Second, this has to be done in order for us to receive funding. But if you take time to look at the document, you'll see that, in many, many cases, there's a text in the right-hand column which says, the concept of these textbooks was supposed to be in place until 2008 or 10 or 12, and time ran out, but the state allows you to continue to use the same textbooks to meet the standards of this particular issue, okay? And that's sort of the context. The other thing is that, as I said in the previous presentation with Marilyn and Jackie, there's no way that you could ever truly adopt a resolution that said everything is aligned until all the materials become available, which will be at that later point in time. So they're aligned with something, they're just not aligned with Common Core, and they're aligned sufficiently that I can say to you that the textbooks, there are hundreds that are mentioned here, right? These are usable, useful, supplemented by our teachers, and this list would be, if you went to 10 other randomly selected districts, you'd see pretty much the same. There's no great difference.
So we need to have a public hearing. Can we have a motion to open that?
Move to open the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any comments, public comments on textbooks? Have you all read the textbooks? Since there are no comments,
I'll move to close the public meeting.
Right.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any questions or comments from the board?
I think it's obvious, this is not the main event on our materials. This is a little more, this is a more perfunctory requirement, and I just want everyone to know that this is an ongoing discussion in the district. The district's acutely aware of, this quick change over to Common Core and the need to do our best to have appropriate materials, and I feel like the district's doing the best it can right now on that subject.
So these lists are not from the state, they're from us?
They're from us, but these books and other materials appear on some former year of the state-approved list.
Yeah, because it's
right.
not just listing ours, it's listing.
Oh, no, yeah, they're right, and then you choose from that. But so if we choose X, Y, or Z, if there is the legal extension to use that material, until such time as they say you can't do it anymore. And really, it was tied to the lack of funding. Because you saw, I wrote you today, how much the mathematics curriculum goes over $100,000. So each time you update a discipline, K-12 or K-6, you're spending tens of thousands into six figures. And it was just impossible for districts to do that. Now that there's some more funding, I think they may say time for, we think science is next, right? We think science probably have a next.
Well, ELA, we're going to have a list of publishers that are SPE approved November 2015, so
Okay,
next
good.
month.
Right, so
And then the NGSS.
yeah, that's right. ELA is next, that's true. Yeah.
What's NGSS?
Next Generation Science Standards.
You know more letters than anybody.
I'm the queen of
She's
letters.
the queen of acronyms.
I was hoping you'd say, it's NIGS. What are you talking about?
So I think it's safe to say that by state standards, our materials are sufficient.
They are sufficient, yes.
And that's the question
That's right.
that we're answering.
Exactly.
I move approval of item 7.3.1.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Now, we've been here for a little while. I thought it might be a good time for a 10-minute break. We have some refreshments in the conference room. It's down at the end of the hall.
Everything open?
They will be.
Okay, thanks.
But let's really try to be back here in about 10 minutes so we can, I don't think we need to spend a huge amount of time on the rest of the meeting, but there's enough time that it breaks.
Yeah.
Construction.
Yeah, justified.
Right now for it. I'm just curious. Those are those ones, as you can imagine, after our experience of
It's not, I can tell you by the object code, but it's not a concept that we use the facility for, based on object code. So, my guess would be that's where our golf team.
Yeah, my sister did that.
percentage that all the way up.
Yeah, no, that's,
I was there.
the,
So there is.
and the reality is that those are all because overall, it is.
No, I mean, they're aware of the fact, I'm not sure they're aware of the.
I think they are. So, for one thing, for the most part, it's all better than periods are low. And so, if they're full, it's up to 80%.
Oh, there you go. Okay, right. That could be a reason. No, just end up there.
So, 60% employee also is getting a contribution, and even whereas last night was all of our staff, 4 hours.
I just figured
Anyway, I'll send you a list of what's to
I got some burritos from the water polo boys.
Yes, I know. I wanted to make some experience that I really think we are fine. I'll be there for 2 hours. It's really fun.
Oh, look at that. Look at I'm gonna go tomorrow. I wasn't gonna go tomorrow, but then they did not go to school. I got another kid back. Cannot water the
wasn't expecting yours. And it's neither here. I usually do that. I usually last minute. I get a last minute appeal. I said I would not be every year.
All of those variations are possible.
Half of my board was there. I know. But these,
I don't think so, but I don't really know.
Just enough.
And you know, they were very, exactly, so it's, and even when it lines up, I know.
You really want to make sure that it's sold with
A couple of students rounding the edges here. Exactly. Well, I wanted to do that.
And so when I was going very aware that my either be, and I think Chelsea's already looking at this. Find some monthly file.
Because I so that's why I have to do that. Because I want kids to be really clear.
Every year it's changing.
And then we have
Nobody's available.
I think that's, we had a nobody reads right for us. We would have said that. Situation, we said we,
So what you got?
You're bringing up the report. No, we have, I'm sure we will have.
so when you say bring in Cindy, what role does Cindy have?
What I'm envisioning is there has to be someone that's the keeper of the project. So when you're, you decide what to do what you've done in the past, you probably talked about you probably have a sense of when those happen. That kind of information needs to be same thing with Facebook. What when we sit down and do our calendar and we think we will do this, we will do this. We want all that information to travel so that's important. And then if they want to change it, great, fine. And that way, having that person that does the taxes and maybe even does the bookkeeping, because most people don't. I don't think it's on that line.
I had to ask him.
I haven't seen it.
You know, I was pretty surprised by.
Yeah.
Because I know that we're trying to call.
It is a big test, but, and it's duly so because at the beginning of every year, that's when it all comes in. So you have weeks to turn it around. That's also though, at least in my experience at Toba, that was the prime time. After that, it really drops off.
So I love what you're talking about because I have an idea like best practices.
Right.
For each SPE.
Right.
And that will continue to really
Right, I think we would, and that way, you know, as we end this year, we might be able to end this year, already know what we want to say, and have that done.
Yeah, everything that we do for the work that the city did all over here, we have a copy.
Does he have any
To have the minutes.
Okay, well, so the other thing would be, I don't know if you would deal, I am not.
You know what else is good for you?
But I included that into law, so for Toba, all the advocates, all the insurance, all the taxes, all the minutes, all, they have it's on the tax.
Oh my goodness.
It's neither here nor there, we can get you familiar with it, but the point is, rather than it be a physical piece of paper stuck inside file, it's electronically up there, all board members can see it and have access to it. It's on there. And it just and then you transfer that password and email to the next student.
So our bylaws require that we have audit every other year.
Do you know if you're constantly,
Twice a year, I can't remember what it's by.
Probably five, but I don't know.
But that was a 15 minutes of getting last year, 'cause I was on the board last year.
But see, all of that will be able to be less in all the travels to the next. They don't have to walk the road. Yes. You know what, I really am excited, and I really, again, if you have someone. Is it a group or? The other thing that can happen, you know, sorry. I'm still,
Well, it says 71. Had that
I have no problem with
Well, there you go. So then that's true.
Next time
One story of
After tomorrow. Oh, actually. And then this is for Suzanne. This can go anytime. This can go tomorrow.
Talking, absolutely. Put them both in their boxes first thing. Good. Oh, fun. I wish I could tell you what I'm doing this weekend, but I might be in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
But I would like to.
Come on, Betty. She's helping us with the.
10 minutes.
Those are fun.
Let's do this.
I said, you don't care what it's like. Yeah, I got 1 minute.
Don't fall. That will hurt.
Last one sitting is late.
I declare it a tie.
Coming, yeah.
Is it done? No. Oh,
14.
Okay. All right, we'd like to welcome everyone back to the meeting. And our next item of business is the contract for Balfour Beatty Construction. And Kate, do you want to start? And then Andy, we want to get your input
Yeah,
on
this
this.
will be mostly Andy's show. So first of all, Dennis Cocknell, welcome back. Good to see you. Josh, thank you for hanging in there with us. So as the board knows, I've shared with them, we're all raring to go to start our work on the implementation of Measure J. And the four-person, let's just call it leadership team for now, would be Andy and Josh and Dennis and myself. But with many, many more people to participate. Certainly ongoing involvement of some members of the Citizens Oversight Committee, and as I shared with the board, I hope 1 or 2 board members who would be interested in participating with us. So, as you can see from the brief introduction and the agenda, we're now a little less than 2 months away from the original decision to engage Balfour Beatty, and so Andy and Dennis and our attorneys and their attorneys have been working on language construction, and most recently significant involvement from a couple of board members who were particularly interested in language. And Andy has done a masterful job, I think, of pulling it all together. His legal and business training really was brought to bear here. So what I have is a document of 5 pages, which Andy compiled today following email conversations with board members and me to bring together improvements in the contract that I refer to in the agenda. That is the one that is very long. Right, so rather than give you all of the long pages again and have to find the red line areas, these are just the red line areas. And so now I will ask Andy to describe the changes that are red line. You know, there's some significant improvements. There just aren't that many, thankfully. So go ahead.
Sure. So last week you received the bigger contract, as Hank said. I just want to give 3 summary points to the initial contract, and then discuss with you the work that's been going on over the past couple days. So a few overriding themes. One, and I think what's most important that came out through discussions over the past few days, and Dennis has been very open with us, starting with the actual interview process and going forward, is that this entire contract really maintains the flexibility that the district has been seeking, specifically that each of these items are at the district's request. So whereas in the contract it may state that Balfour Beatty has the responsibility to do X, it's all premised on some of the most introductory language of the first 2 sections, which allow the district to be the one to direct the overall work, the times at which Balfour Beatty is going to become involved in the project, and the times that we may actually elect to have Josh and our own internal staff take the lead on projects. So keep in mind that the overall project or overall agreement still maintains that flexibility. Also, we did create some language in here that allows us to have the initial term that we've been discussing, which was from whatever date that we end up executing the agreement until December 31 of 16. So approximately a 15-month timeline with successive 1-year options at district sole discretion. So that gives us the flexibility, but then the final point is that actually Balfour Beatty really at their recommendation and or suggestion was allowing us even greater flexibility. And you'll see in the clause, I believe, section 9 allows us the ability to actually end the agreement at any time if it's for whatever reason we decide, without cause, at our convenience. And the recourse for Balfour Beatty is that they will be compensated for work performed up until the time of notice of termination. So we have this term to the agreement, but we are the sole party that maintains the right to terminate without cause at our convenience, without requiring a certain period of notice prior to that decision. So really the contract overall maintains that flexibility. So those are the main points I wanted to focus on from the larger agreement, and then we'll discuss what you've just received in the red line version. We have one change to the actual contract itself, and then a couple changes to the exhibits that were attached to the contract. The substantive change to the actual contract is some much improved language around ADR, alternative dispute resolution. Previously, the agreement stated that first mediation, then arbitration may be done. It was not shells. It allowed the parties to enter into an agreement as to how they want to seek resolution when there was need. This gives much more clearly defined timelines of when mediation will be used, when we'll move into arbitration, and that it will be a shall move into binding arbitration rather than continue to allow parties who are already at odds about an issue try to negotiate whether or not they're going to be going to arbitration versus going to the court. So some really improved language, again, still protecting the district, though, of stating that if there is a disagreement that may require mediation, that Balfour Beatty will maintain their responsibility to continue forward with the tasks that we're assigning them during that dispute. So that's the one substantive change to the actual agreement. To the exhibits, we have a change on page A4, which provides a little clarification in the section that states what manager is not responsible for. If you look at the bottom of that page, it was a little confusing because it could be read that they were removing any responsibility for general errors and omissions that could be related to the project. And so we wanted to clarify, and Balfour Beatty, of course, Dennis was very supportive of this addition, that really what the firm not being responsible for is tied to design errors being performed by parties who we directly hire, and specifically it's design errors, so therefore it'd be likely an architect, an engineer, or another consultant, again, the basis though being that they're actually people who are contracted by us, that Belfour Bay is not a architecture firm, and so they may be relying on the same things that we're relying on based on our contract with that architect, and they're just stating that's not going to be a responsibility of theirs for the architect's error and omissions. Of course, they're going to use their expertise to help us find those when possible, though. You'll also see changes to Exhibit D. This is the most substantive changes to the exhibits, really providing much better clarification as to what their hourly rates include. There was some confusion previously in the language about whether or not the hourly rates that were listed on page 2 of the Exhibit D included those items which are listed on page 1 of Exhibit D, specifically travel to and from sites, overhead cost, and other sorts of kind of indirect costs associated with their performance of their work. So this language tries to clarify that the hourly rates that they've proposed on page 2 do in fact include the cost of travel. We're not going to be seeing reimbursement requests from Oxnard up to Ojai for their work up here. We won't be seeing a particular add-on just for the cost of their corporate office or anything like that. Those are fully burdened labor rates that they're providing to us, which those rates, after Josh, Hank, and I really worked with Dennis, were provided at a lower rate than what we saw in a neighboring district from 2009 from the contract they had with them. So really competitive rates that they provide to us that were at better terms than a 6-year-old district's agreement. Other changes to this Exhibit D is giving us, I think, much needed protection. The recommendation of one board member to make sure that we had some ceiling to rate escalation, but also making sure it wasn't just a guarantee, but rather that it would be tied to labor rates that based on the market at that time. So if you look at the hourly rates, paragraph 3, the modification now states that the hourly rates that they've provided to us may escalate by no more than 3% after a 2-year term, but will be in line with fair market rates. So if the market tanks 2 years from now and fair market rates are lower than what they are currently, they're not going to just be guaranteed that 3% escalation. I think those are really the significant changes to the document from where we are going from Friday till today.
Great, thanks Andy, and thanks for your work. Are there comments, questions from the board?
Just one question. To what extent has the Oversight Committee seen this?
It has not. I mean, we worked on it, well, as I said, the time period between late August and late September was all that intensive work among lawyers and organizations. And in the last several days, you received it, we received your comments, Andy's now updated since then. So this particular part of our work has not included the Citizens Oversight Committee. And that's, I know, an issue that Dane and others of you will want to explore. You already know how I feel about the Citizens Oversight Committee. I included Jeff Palmer in the original construction of the RFQ. I've just 5 minutes ago said that they'll be involved in lots of conversations about how we establish priorities. Okay, we're allowed to do a little administrative work first, but not long thereafter. I would like to include some members of the COC and some 1 or 2 board members. So I absolutely envision, as I said during the Measure J presentations, a collegial process.
In case, I think you said Citizens Oversight Committee, but that's what we're talking about.
That's
COC.
Yeah,
I believe you said that.
Citizens Oversight Committee.
Just so the, again, hundreds watching.
Are there?
It's a joke I go to every week or every month, but they do like it.
It's just as funny every month.
Us was back there waving at you.
Other comments, questions?
So, one, thanks for all the work on this. And so 2 things. One, I have a comment about how to involve the COC.
Great.
And first, the contract's fine with me. The only thing I would add is that with respect to the escalation, that there be some period of notice so that if they are planning on escalating or increasing their rates, that we get some notice of that ahead of time, so we just don't get a bill with new rates.
Of course.
and that, obviously we will, on the board, we want to know as well. And then with the COC, what I would love to do is provisionally approve this, and then have it go to the COC, see if anyone has any comments. I mean, it's been looked at by a number of lawyers, and I don't anticipate there's going to be a lot. And as Andy has pointed out, and the best part about this contract is that it's frankly a one-directional marriage. I mean, we are giving ourselves, and Dennis nicely agreed that that our commitment is only as far as we want to be committed at any moment. If we decide halfway through it that it's not working out, we can unilaterally cancel the contract without any penalty. So I don't anticipate people on the COC having any particular issue, but I certainly think it's appropriate for them to have a look at it.
Yeah, along those lines, and there are a number of ways we could do this, but certainly one way would be to make sure they get a copy as soon as possible. Give them a couple of weeks to take a look at it. If they have comments, to get back. And if we agree that we're okay with it as it is, then Andy and Hank would use their best efforts to incorporate comments from the COC in a discussion with Balfour Beatty. And then once 2 weeks passes, then we give authority to either Hank or Andy or myself to take a final look and just sign off on it.
Yeah, I think the only other possibility might be if they want to meet with us for some reason, and if they wanted to meet with us then, or representatives from the COC, then we could have a short special meeting to try to resolve any questions that they have. But yeah, I like your thought.
Andy, I'm wondering if you can point out to me, because it sure reads to, I know you say this is their responsibility if we ask them to, but I'm specifically looking at Exhibit A 3.1, where it says, communication from contractors to district and the design team shall be through the manager. Managers shall receive simultaneous copies. I don't have a problem with them receiving copies, but if basically that seems to me that's saying anytime, if you hire a painter as a contractor, your communication needs to go through Balfour Beatty for that. And I thought that one of the things we had talked about was that was not going to be the case, that there was going to be certain trades where we felt we would be dealing with them directly, or Josh would be dealing with them, and they would not go through. And there's, 3 or 4 articles that I feel really, I understand that, comforted by the fact that you said, no, that means that if we ask them to do something, they're responsible for it, but I feel like the wording is saying they get to do it. And I'm very concerned about how much we'll use them. Josh already has a relationship with them, so that comfort is a nice thing, but it's also going to be, I'll just, call, and you kind of forget that it's like every time you call, you're adding up those hours, and, that concerns me.
Yeah, no, very legitimate concern. I do think that this contract is exactly in line with what you're wanting, so I will clarify a few points. I will say if Josh ever does forget, I'll make sure to remind him that every call he makes is racking up the bill. But I will give Dennis a chance to...
I didn't mean that personally, John. You're in that situation when you have a comfort
Of course, no, absolutely understand.
If you want to talk to Dennis, now's the time.
Dennis, do you want to give... I can respond, but do you want to give any feedback as to Balfour Beatty's understanding of this agreement? And
could I ask you a question along those lines, because my understanding is different, and then maybe you could clarify between those. But my understanding is that there are really 2 kinds of projects: the kinds of projects we do ourselves, and the kind of projects that Balfour Beatty is coordinating. And so the ones we do ourselves, they really don't have anything to do with. We do those, and we communicate with people however we want to communicate with them. When Balfour Beatty is the lead on a project, and those are defined, then they're the ones coordinating that, because that's what we're hiring them to do.
Right, that's absolutely...
Yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. The one augmentation to make to that is they will do that so long as that's what we want them to do. So the reason that we don't have mays, but rather we have shells, is to avoid them saying, well, no, it's just a may, we don't feel like doing that. We're saying, no, that's the exact reason we hired you on to perform this function. But I will point to a few sections, but again, I want to give Dennis a chance as well.
I'll let you go ahead and feed in, and if I can come in behind you with any additional information.
Sure
I can do
thing.
that.
So I believe two main areas that we can address that is in the actual primary contract. If we pull up under Article 2, we'll highlight first. So one, we have in Article 2.1 under scope. The second second sentence in, I apologize. The parties agree that the manager's services described herein are based on construction manager, general contractor structure on this project. The district reserves the right to change the structure, including without limitation, and it gives one specific example of how we could potentially be changing, but it's allowing the district to retain control of modifying in this particular project that you're going to be serving the role of construction manager, but in another project we're going to go ahead and retain that right to keep you in a more reduced role.
Or actually not at all. I mean, one of the things we talked, Andy referred to that post-August 18th meeting, right, when Dennis was really cooperative and said, yeah, we're going to drive the rates down, and you see the result here. Andy gave you the example of the rates being lower than a 6-year-old contract with another district. But a big part of that conversation was putting on the table the fact that we have a director of maintenance and operations who has a huge background in this area, right? And so you can tell that, I mean, their relationship is great. And when all started all the way back when they walked around all of the schools to construct the needs assessment. But from minute one, you all have heard and you know, there will be numerous projects that will not involve Balfour Beatty. And then the big ones, and the ones where either Josh doesn't have the expertise or it's just impossible for a person who has another job to do, that's when they'll be really critical. But there will be, like, say, painters or the smaller projects that are more maintenance related than they are complex. And the thing that I always think about when Dennis talks is all of the paperwork that has to be done to get the project approved by you-know-who, right? And, you know, Josh just can't do that. He can do the oversight and the construction of the project conceptually, but getting it all implemented, that's what their infrastructure will be hugely important, but we don't need it to hire a painter.
Right. So I'd say another section, if you go to 2.5, coordination. In the performance of manager's services under this agreement, manager agrees that it will maintain such coordination with the district personnel and/or its designated representatives as may be requested and desirable. So again, this is putting district in the driver's seat as far as designating what coordination, what level of support we need from them in a given project versus, again, what we're going to be spearheading. So, and then we have throughout the contract, you'll see there are times where, just to make very clear, it states at district's request or giving similar provision to that. But I think that the concern that you have is something that was shared really dating back to all of our presence on the interview panel and going forward. And so I do have confidence that this contract does maintain district flexibility with the extent to which Balfour Beatty participates within a given project.
Right. And I do appreciate your, we exchanged some emails about pointing out, Dennis, really how great it is that you're bringing that knowledge and you can and look at things beforehand, making recommendations to us so that we are using our time and money most valuably. So I do appreciate that. The Exhibit D, one in red now that says travel time to and from job sites.
Right.
I mean, obviously, you know, we're a small district, traveling to and from the sites is not, but is that included, so the time from Oxnard to here is charged to a family? They get in the car in Oxnard and...
No, it's not.
No, it's not either. We just wanted to make, you know, clearly identify one specific area, but the general also applies, which is the following clause of travel expenses within 200 miles of the district's office location. So all travel between Oxnard and up here would also be, would not be reimbursable. It's part of the burdened labor rate they provided. If for some reason they had to go all the way up to Sacramento to work with DSA on something, then in that case, that would be going beyond the scope of just the basic travel from Agora, Oxnard, wherever the employees reside to traveling up here, that they would not be seeking reimbursement for that travel cost.
Yeah, there's a distinction between the time, the travel time, and the expenses. So I just wanted it to be clear that we were not going to be charged for the time to drive to Ojai as opposed to Oxnard. You know, someone in out for the day, and that's in there now, so that's great.
It is?
Yes, it's all included in the hourly rates.
Yeah, so they're charging for the time.
Oh, no, that's not intended to mean that. I mean, it's intended to mean that that they're already, as you say, fully, fully burdened.
Dennis, you get in the car, you get in the car, Oxnard at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're here at 8:45. What time does the meter start?
8:45 when we meet.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess that's the best way to put it, right? So, right? You know, so getting here is part of the job. We're not going to pay an hourly rate to get
That's a good point, though, Jane. I mean, I actually included that with the explicit idea that I wanted the rates to the regular hourly billing to already, you know, to not be additionally billed.
Right.
And I think we all understood it that way, but I could sort of see.
Okay, well, we have 2 weeks to get it perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other question, what about the other projects that aren't closed out, the old?
Oh, yeah, okay, well,
Is that
that's
going
a great
to
question.
affect, is that going to affect anything that we're moving forward with?
I guess I would say no, because they're sort of separate things, right? I mean, Josh, and you've been working on this for months. We have to get those 31 items done, right?
Before we can start
There's a piece of work. You remember, though, back when Dennis was here in August, he proposed, and actually so did all the other firms when they met, with us, proposed that we actually engage another group, right? That there are people who specialize, right, in the DSA closeout, right? So you got to get those done. And I think, Dennis, didn't you also recommend that you go to an outside, not Balfour Beatty, it's that people just do that for a living?
Yeah, there's people outside that do that, and then we also have specialists on staff that do that as well.
So, and then.
Well, and Dennis also said that there are some projects that we'll be doing that we'll have to, right?
We do, yeah.
Pull in those.
But they have I think I told you before, one of the most impressive members of their team was this guy who just picked up the phone and called, DSA, and they know him for 25, 30 years. But we have to get those done, but we're not going to stop, we're not going to fail to move ahead.
Okay. That was, I guess that's
We're not just going to wait till we need it.
Is it going to hinder us?
Maybe, you're right, right? Aren't there some projects?
Because there are some things that will directly affect us. That is true.
But the predominant ones just have to be, they're more isolated things.
Yeah, like
Left over
replacing a
from
roof with the new roof system.
There you go.
Replacing what was already there, for
There you go.
example. That'd be a great example where that's not going to affect us. We need to do that.
Yeah.
And we can move forward with that process.
Anything else?
That's my other question.
Right, so the question is if we're okay approving this with the understanding that we're going to work for the next 2 weeks with the COC, get their input, and then use our best efforts to do this, and then kind of give authorization to somebody to sign off on it on our side.
But actually, it's sort of, in the contract, it says a name and title, so, we'll sort of figure out, it's probably you or me to do that. And what I'll do then, first, I'll take responsibility, number one, for giving hard copy and email copy to Jeff, and either Jeff can send it out, he sort of likes to do that, or I'll just send it out for him to all the 9 members. I'll give him the timeline. I'll set up a time for Jeff to meet with Andy and Josh and me and Dennis, okay? And we'll just move ahead, and I'll communicate with you about what I'm hearing, either from Jeff alone or from others to Jeff, so that in advance of that 2-week period, 2 weeks from today, you'll know the extent of their comments.
And Linda makes a good point. If they do ask for a meeting with us, then we'll set
Special
that
meeting,
up.
well, then it's a special
Or if
meeting.
they have something
All right.
big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that was one of the options I wrote you about, yeah. You can always have a one-item special meeting.
But assuming that it's little stuff or nothing at all, then I will go ahead. I think it'd be good to have you circulate to the board whatever changes there are.
I sure will.
And we get feedback from the board members to make sure we're all comfortable.
Yep, we'll do that.
And then-
Just to me.
Just to you.
Just to me.
Right. And then pick a date, maybe the 20th is 2 weeks from today, or would another date be? Is that enough time, do you think?
For them to look at it?
Right.
I would think so, I would hope so.
We had 3 days, yeah.
Right, well, yeah, and that includes working with Dennis too. Well,
That's true. Yeah, it should be sufficient.
so, all right, and then I authorize, do I usually sign these things?
Yeah, well, I'll just, for Dennis, who usually signs, board president or superintendent?
I've seen both.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Board
All right,
authorization.
one of the two of us will
superintendent to
sign.
Okay, one of them.
Great. All right,
All right, so why don't we just say, you could hold, if you hold 5:30 on the 20th, right, as a possible time to meet. I'll keep you informed, and I'm hoping it'll go so smoothly we don't need to meet, but if they'd like to meet, we'll meet.
So we need to approve it.
yes.
Yeah.
So I move approval of the Balfour Beatty Construction Management Company.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
The door, speaking of facilities, we need the door open a little air, since we don't have air
You could
conditioning
take
anymore.
that off. Even I think.
Jane's had her sweater on and off numerous times. Can we do that, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That we go to
The 7-Eleven committee.
752 before 751?
Yeah.
Okay, even though.
I think 7.1
As a
will go
gesture.
fast, but yeah, as a gesture, as the least we can do.
Yeah.
We have
Four.
great volunteers.
Yeah, Mary Ann,
Yeah.
Steve,
Mike.
and Elizabeth. Yeah,
Chris.
four, and Chris, five. And Andy, oh, Andy, I forgot Andy, here we go, thank you, yeah, there you go.
Not to mention Ann.
1, 2,
Mike.
3, 4,
Schmidt, too.
5. We have
Back there.
5, Mike plus Andy is 6.
We really appreciate.
We have a majority here.
Thank you.
Majority
And
11.
thanks for agreeing to serve. This is a really important committee, I think. And we really appreciate your service on this. Are there any questions from the board? Otherwise,
Just a couple thoughts.
yeah,
A
go
couple
ahead.
of real quick thoughts. First of all, again, thank you for the 6 of you being here. We had 22 candidates. It was, in many cases, just a really tough choice. The criteria, if it's okay if I just sort of speak for a minute on behalf of the committee, we worked very hard to construct a committee that, when everybody gets to know who all these people are, a combination of heavily involved parents of students, present students and former students, and also a very strong representation of people who've been in the community either not a long time or in many cases a long time, who would not be viewed as their primary representation on the committee as parents of students. They might have been, but that's not really why they're on the committee. I don't want to get into a lot of details, but for instance, Mike Crumpschmidt is a 30-plus year veteran as a teacher in the district, still teaches in the adult leaving school, certainly can represent the views of faculty members going back a long time. And he has some very interesting things to say about, just some views about being in Ojai that amount of time and seeing the issue of school site use come and go. And again, without getting into all people, Andy is representing the administration, and then the other 9 represent various constituencies within the district and meeting all the standards that are in the school code in terms of the construction of the 7-month committee. Every elementary district, every elementary school is represented by either a present or a very engaged former parent in that attendance area, so I have no doubt that there will be a clear representation and commentary from each of the 5 elementary schools involved in the K-6 school site 7-11 committee. Lots more to say about the qualifications of all these people. Everybody is highly qualified and engaged. The only other thing I'd say is thank you to Glenn Fout. The 3 of us know him well. I've worked with him a lot, as others know him even longer, way longer than I have. I'm just very impressed pretty much every time I'm around him in terms of the quality of his thinking, the clarity of his thinking, and his fairness. And I just can't think of a better person to serve as chair. So.
Did you want to read off those
Yeah,
names?
well, they have them. We put them.
We can read them off the TV.
No, I think I let Kevin do that. Yeah, really. Okay, very quickly. So, now the only person I don't want to mispronounce her name, so the only person I don't know in this whole group is the first one. So Gina, is it Braget? Braget?
I don't know.
Okay, she's from Miners Oaks. Representation of the PTA at Miners Oaks. Andy Cantwell, Chris Danch, we mentioned before, Glenn Fout, Lydia Johnson, Mike Crumschmidt, mentioned, Elizabeth Moore is here, Steve Quillisi, we know from a lot of public involvement in the last number of months, Marion Ratcliffe, she and I have worked on numerous issues together, Gabriela Vargas, goes by Gabby, and David White, who's part of our Food for Thought group. So I think it's just an exceptional group of 11. And the other thing I'd say in the email that I sent to the 11 identified as our members and also those who applied and whom we could not choose because we have a limit of 11, I said that at this meeting I was going to talk just a little bit about the construction of getting started. And since it's 8:20, I'll make it just really quick. I think the three of us see it as our responsibility to just get you together, get you organized. So there'll be 14 people in the meeting, the first meeting. I will bring, and I'll distribute it beforehand, but I'll bring, for anybody who wants to come, because all these meetings are open to the public, all of them, the two major reports that we had completed in June and August, right, on space utilization and on demographic projections. And I'll have lots of other data that I hope you'll find important in your work. That's really our responsibility, is to get you started and talk a little bit about what we would hope the committee would consider, the kind of timeline that we hope you would work under, and I mentioned that in the materials that went out to advertise for the committee back in August. We'd like the committee to try to finish its work by the end of February. I think that's reasonable, but we'll see. Pretty intensive set of meetings, I would think at least 2 a month, maybe more, but figure 2 a month, not 1 a month, at least 2, maybe more. Times of the meetings to be determined by the membership, and we'll just do more when we have the meeting. I don't think I want to say much more than that now, but that's sort of where we're going. And of course, as Kevin pointed out a meeting ago in September, not to try to be anything other than transparent, this group will recommend to the board the future of our elementary school site utilization. Right? Retain all 5, if not, how many, which ones, why? Obviously the analysis is critical, and the board makes the decision. This is not a decision-making group. It's a group that comes together to make recommendations based on their best judgment, and obviously I know how this board works. They will certainly take the recommendations with great earnest. Okay?
Great. Terrific, thanks. And I think you said it a little bit, but to reinforce, there are a lot of good people who volunteered that we just couldn't take because of the restrictions. And we appreciate their willingness.
Well, we took as many as we could take.
Right.
I mean, we had 10 on the last 7-11 committee. For this one, we didn't fill out the 11th spot, and we had 9, right? COC members, and that could have been a different number. So this is actually the biggest one we've had.
Right. So, are there any comments or questions, or should we have a vote to approve?
Again, I just want to thank the board members who worked on this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time, and it's a very important thing. I think the results are really good.
Similar, and also thank everyone who stepped up to do this, because we all know that often people say they're going to step up and don't, and to get so many very qualified people willing to do something that is not going to be easy, but as Kennedy said, it will be hard. It's nice.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, thank you.
I move approval of the 7-11 committee.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Michael.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for waiting.
And thanks in advance for all your great service.
Did you really think you weren't going to get appointed, Mary Ann?
You just never know.
Or Steve? Thank you.
Great, thank
Here,
you. Great. Going back to 7.5.1, in our last meeting, we reviewed board policies. Now is our opportunity to approve those policies. Are there questions?
I was going to move approval, but.
Second.
You got it. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Great. Superintendent's report?
Next.
Okay. Nothing for approval. I just want to underscore something that I said earlier, and that is that we're entering the first day of this next week, and I'll show you the email that I sent to the staff. It's just a day we've had preciously few of in the last number of years, and I find, I guess, I love being around kids in all different ways, but I actually find these days, for me, to be the most energizing, because I get to see, you know, in this case, all of our certificated and all of our classified staff together, same day, in probably 7 different sites, SITES sites, and split up by departments in some cases in the high school and junior high. The general construction of the elementary program analysis will be in groupings of grades, early grades, older grades, looking at the kind of data that we talked about earlier tonight. And it's just really fun to see all of these people conversing together on behalf of the kids. And I just hope that everything allows us to continue to do this in the upcoming years. Because, as I said, we've had so few in the last number of years. I'll send you the full list of what will be going on that day. You are welcome. All of you are welcome to attend. Even if 3 of you show up at the same place, that's okay. All right, it's not official board business. Right? So, you know, if you want to pick a session or two, a place or two, I'm confident. I haven't asked permission on this yet, but I'm confident because I know how our faculty and classified staff work. They would welcome you. They would not see it at all as sort of butting in or watching over their shoulder. To the contrary, I think they're, you know, by nature performers. And I think they might even up the ante a little bit if they know that you're there. A great day coming up on Monday, and you know, I hope you have the opportunity, if you have a little time in your schedule, to come. One session, there's one early morning, I think 8 to 10, I'll double check, session where Janine will be talking about the kind of issues that, you know, predominated in the first hour plus of our meeting tonight. And if you haven't heard her presentation, you'll want to see it. Okay, that's it.
Terrific. Items for future agendas.
I just have 2, I don't, anyway, they're just thoughts that the former 7-Eleven committee, I have had people say, so what about that? Is there somebody gonna come up with an idea for a hotel, or, so if we ever are approached, I'd like to hear about it. But
okay, I can, not now because it's sort of late, but well, let's put it this way, there's the official and the unofficial answer, okay? The official answer is that the report of 3 years ago or so stands on its merits, 9-to-1 vote, you know what the vote was, right? And there are some number of people out there who have interest in this place, but I haven't received any formal request from anybody. Sort of, there's one, it's pretty close, but certainly not, although it sounded magnificent, potentially, certainly not from the people written about in the audit order. Not. I actually did meet Chris once, but it was a number of years ago, and he hasn't talked with me since. But he obviously has some interest. Mark Lewis seems to feel that he has a lot of interest, but I have not seen any email or any formal communication from him. This Eric, I'm sorry, Eric, excuse me, misspoke. Great guy, obviously very successful. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. We also know that we've had conversations, a formal conversation with the city council, where they have some issues they have to deal with, right, in terms of landmarking and things like that involving chaparral, so that needs to be updated also. But as far as the 7-Eleven committee is concerned, it's a document that is still official.
Officially in limbo.
Officially in limbo. Officially in limbo, that's fair.
And then the second thing was to just bring before the board, I think I mentioned it maybe last January and maybe in August or July when I was talking about the student representative. And I'm more than willing to do the legwork for it. I would love to have something that's just over by Kathy when we come in that sort of shows us, hey, this is what's going on in the next month. And,
like a calendar.
Like a calendar. And just maybe to sort of have someone sign up and say, hey, I think I'm going to try to go to that, so that we don't all go, maybe we all go to one thing and then we never go to another school, or so that we sort of we're just aware, oh, I didn't know Michael was going to that, I'll go to the, there's 2 fall fiestas on the same night.
Well, how about let's use technology. Okay, so Kathy will organize exactly that data.
Well, I don't want to.
It's already there. It's already on the website.
Just organize. We'll send it out to you. It's on the website, but we'll organize it so it's easier for you to sort of pick and choose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can keep it rolling so that you can see, Jane picked something and Mike picked something, and they're going there, maybe I'll go here. Okay, so we can do that. It's very easy to do.
Easy to print out a page of the calendar if you want to have it sitting.
I'm a subscriber now to the.
There you go.
It fills my calendar with things with acronyms I have no idea. There's apparently somebody for the XY75 meeting. I have a brief one thing, which is all this thought in the past few days about our curriculum materials has gotten me thinking about that as sort of a subject that I wonder, I've brought up before the idea of a study session, but I just wonder, just for us to start thinking about some open-ended opportunity for stakeholders to come and speak about the materials that we use in our schools and just to get different people's perspectives on it. I know a lot because of the need for modern or very current materials on the Common Core. There's a fair amount that's being printed out of the computer and stuff like that. It may not be as traditional as it used to be in terms of always having a textbook for everything. But I just feel like it's an area that I personally don't know enough about, and I also feel like I know every time you bring the subject up, people have thoughts about it, and I feel like we should do it in some kind of a, not necessarily superstructure, but just bring it together.
Let me offer a thought. Number one, what you're talking about is both exciting and time-consuming. It ultimately would be for staff, but we're talking about for the board, okay? And what I could be really excited about, and I think I could get other people excited about, would be coming to a series of, let's call them special meetings, or an early segment in a board meeting, or both, where we would designate that time period. Let's say we had a meeting from 5:30 to 7:30, and we had 2 one-hour segments where, and I guess the only part of where I might depart is I would not make the subject the materials. First thing I would do is to have the people who work with the materials, the teachers, explain the curriculum. Okay, you don't have material, there are materials that support the curriculum, but I doubt anybody at this table, probably myself included, could be really articulate about the whole K-12 continuum of curriculum. So what I would do is if the board is really interested in this study, I would incorporate the study of the materials in the study of the curriculum. They're not, materials aren't just hanging out there.
Yeah, no.
So for example, if you want to do it, let's say school year, okay? I could give you a calendar, you could massage it and come up with something that you might like better. But if you wanted to have, say, one special meeting every other month, or every month, I don't care, I'm here, and or a half hour to an hour slot in a board meeting, which we'd have to be careful, right, to not have another one this long without it, but,
Right.
you know, something like that. And I'm happy and would lead that with great enthusiasm. I wouldn't do it just on materials, because they're not there just for no reason. They're there because it's a curriculum.
But I really do like the idea of, let's, say, second grade, we spend a half hour at a meeting learning what they're using and why.
Sure.
Or maybe we do it by subject matter, I don't know how.
Well, as I said,
We used
cut
to
it
have
by-
reports on subject matter, the
Right.
way different subjects were taught in the district.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, and we still do that. We
Yeah.
have the math and.
Yeah, we're not, but they tend to be when a big thing is happening.
Yeah.
You know, we're not looking at it sort of coherently in a schedule,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So if the majority of the board would like to do that, I would be thrilled to sit down with the principals and talk about it. So, oh, now you want to.
Now hot.
Anyway, so-
Oh, wait, we still have the consent calendar.
That's easy. Anyway, so, you know, you see what I'm saying?
It's something to think about, how it, I think it's something for us to discuss, how we want to do that to get the maximum
I think what I would do, maybe the way I would start is, I would put on the November 17th, that's pretty long, but let's just say November 17th, an agenda item to talk about how to do it. Okay, because there are a lot of ways to do it. I just gave you.
So we could get some ideas, because, I like the idea of learning about what's going on, but I kind of agree, it's kind of overwhelming to say, K through 12, what are the textbooks and what are they
And we
supposed
can
to
answer
learn?
it. That could be really interesting, but it has to be
You have
tied.
5 minutes to
Yeah,
explain it.
right. But it has to be tied to what the teachers are doing. It's not just a hard number.
But I do love the idea.
So I'll put it on, just know that November 17th is going to be pretty dense with the reporting on the test results.
So just a question, so I think I heard you say that you wanted to hear from the parents as well in terms of how they're feeling about this?
Well, I think that's certainly was
that's what
part
I'd be interested
of
in.
what I said, but, in deference to.
We announced it.
Right, right. And it's segmented,
Yeah,
just here.
exactly. We put it out in the school and
I think
say,
that's a good
if you want to come learn about the second grade curriculum and the materials that are attached to that, there'll be an opportunity for you to speak about that.
I think that'd be interesting.
Well, I also feel like timing is good right now because we're going through this big transition. There's a lot in flux, and it would just be nice to take stock.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sounds good. Great. Anything else? Then we'll move to the consent calendar. Are there any questions, or do we have a motion to approve?
Any idea why October moved up from November to October?
I have no idea.
You know,
I really don't.
on the Catalina?
October.
October 26th.
It's October, it used to be the week before Thanksgiving, but.
Do you know that?
Yes, I know why.
Why?
When we had the group with the 90 kids last year, they didn't really have room in their traditional time, which was November. So they had to switch it to October, and once they did, they actually were very happy with it because it didn't rain and it was less cold and stuff, so they kept it.
That's why she's here.
Cold? Did you say cold?
Thank you.
In November,
The water was cold.
Oh, the water was cold.
Water's
It's not supposed to go in the water, right?
Water's cold.
Water right now is 75. Somebody told me.
Really? Wow. All right.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for your work. The meeting is now adjourned.